Are we live? Yes, we are. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's the Sunday chat, the rotating, floating, depends on who's awake and alive and what their internet is like chat. Thanks for joining us today. We have a super extra special guest star. Mr. Gore Vidal himself is in the house, or was he, or as we like to call him, Mr. Earl Grey, and then go, oh, I mean, Gore Vidal.
Hey, Earl.
GV, how's it going, man? It's good to see your face. How are you?
I think Earl Grey is going to contact Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Yeah. To get things sorted, yeah.
Well, they are international, and they have a few things to deal with Interpol. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So sorry, Earl Grey, had nothing to do with this entirely.
Yeah. Thanks very much for joining us, choosing us as your kind of first appearance, I guess. Is this a first appearance? A live face appearance, so we appreciate it. It's great to see you and have you.
I'm grateful you have me. And again, I'm not pressed. I mean, I took a bath this morning, but that's not exactly the same as being, pressed and cleaned.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not a 9.8. That was gray.
We could send this episode to the Rogue Trader afterwards.
I think you should. And but also good morning to Celia, and from Norway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you're here. And no, but I'm grateful all of you having me. And basically, for those in the chat, is many years ago, I think I jokingly said to Terrence, "Well, if you ever have a live stream, and you'll be the first." And but these people reminded me of that over the years. So.
Yeah. I just want to add here, take that, Chaos and Comics, take that. Me first. It was a little running thing we had a couple of times, yeah.
So misunderstood. But yes, anyway, I'm grateful to be here, and I look forward to it. And hello,
awesome,
everybody on chat.
So should we just dive right into it? Rasa, do you want to start us off?
Don't look at me. I'm on the spot now. Okay, thanks.
Women first.
Yeah, well, I'm only one here. Come on.
Yeah.
All you need is one to populate the world, so we're fine.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, thanks. I don't think I'm ready for that kind of commitment. I'll start with something which is kind of ending, but it's not really ending. I was like, so how many issues is going to be? But apparently this Deadly Class is going to continue a couple more issues. I was thinking we're going to end with 49, then 50 came out, and then apparently 51 and 52, I think, is promised, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a big thing it's a big thing for Remender. Apparently he never reached that mark of 50 comic books in the release, so he was very happy. It's like that extra thread where they have like it talks about people letters and stuff like that. And anyway, so this is the culmination story of our main characters. So not really like culmination yet, but it's just like one of the characters. So I'm blanking her name now. What's her name now? Anyway, doesn't matter. But this is just I don't know why, but this comic books always makes me amazed by the Wes Craig's art more and more. I don't know, maybe it's just such a cup of tea of mine to look at to how he is managing all these action scenes. And the beginning of this, because the last issue I've read was like almost like a love story between two of them, Marcus and the lady, which I forgot the name now. I am forgetting names when I chat online. I guess because you guys put me on the spot now. I think that's why. But he has this amazing fight scenes in his comic book, which is what our
those are great.
Wes Craig is more than capable of doing that. Absolutely fantastic scenes where she's basically going after her brother because they are in creating, like, she wants to take over the power, and it's between her and brother. And brother has killed both of her parents, and then he wants to kill her as well in order to gain it. But in here we have a couple of scenes, and of course I was a bit I didn't understand, but this is how they imagined the scenes would be, because of course the brother, because he is part of he has so many people, henchmen, working for him, is that they have almost like Kill Bill scenes when they go in somewhere. There's this long corridor. There's elevator they have to go through, and there's 40 people waiting for them, and there's only 2 of them or only 1 of them. Saya, that's her name. There you go. Saya's farewell story, basically, almost. Yeah, I got her name back. Anyway, so Saya is basically trying to find out the best way to deal with it. And instead of them approaching them at first, they use this Polish guy who's basically trembling for his life. And he goes in with this menu dish or table, whatever, in a hotel, opens the elevator doors, and he's basically freaking out. And all his henchmen are just waiting for him, like, what are you doing here? We're going to kill you. And like, why are you even here? We didn't order any food. But it's just ongoing massacre throughout a couple of issues in here. So such a big action scenes going on through here, which I absolutely loved it. And of course, because of our creators, and of course the artists doing such a beautiful thing. And even these panels where you can't see anything, the lights, like the flashlights of the gun residue, again you can't see it, and they just how they managed to be able to succeed this. So anyway, as a fun, very good. I mean, I'm still waiting for the end of it, of course, but I absolutely love this. And if it's continued a bit longer, of course I'm going to finish it. So I committed to 50. 2 more issues won't hurt me, hopefully, and it's going to get the ending in a way what I expect. But now I like how this ended is to the same point. Apparently there's a twist where Marcus was involved on purpose, and how he found Saya, how he managed to basically get her off the heroin and stuff like that, to just get her last wish of getting sorted out with her brother and stuff. And there's spoiler alert, which I'm not gonna really show. I guess it's kind of a big reveal anyway. So one of the best things I always read, and I always keep it like right at the end as well. So one of the reminders, I was like, I think the best thing I've read, very consistent, always the same way, and he's really passionate about his story, and he's keep on telling about how disappointed he was about the TV show being cancelled, because apparently the people like in Europe, they found out about this TV show, they love it, and he gets like a bump of people's viewership, but then they can't get anything continuation of another season because it got cancelled. So he says people will find it. We're probably going to be maybe a cult following a little bit, because it tends to be people like this TV show a lot. But I think comic book is way better than the TV show, especially if you know the lore of the whole storyline. So Maya and Marcus and Saya is just that, like two, like Romeo and Juliet in a way, but like with their own really dark pasts and stuff like that, never goes into fruition, to be honest. And the way it ended for her, it doesn't look like it would have been anything positive for both of them as a couple. Yeah. Let's say this way. Too much bad blood, or your lifestyle choices are really wrong.
Yeah.
Because one is a murder, like he kills because of circumstances or whatever of his parents, and she has like another family problems as well. So anyway, very good reminder book.
It's one of those books, every time you show it, like I love seeing the pages. The art is fantastic. The one thing that stood out to me there, though, oftentimes when you get like a wide shot of both pages, just seeing the use of colors, even in the background, that last kind of 2 pages where it was just a series of landscape panels. I love the use of the colors in the backgrounds there.
Yeah.
Kind of separate the different time periods, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, so the colorist has changed. So Lil Lurich is colorist now, but before used to be somebody else, which I forgot. It was kind of changed in like issue 25 or something like that. But he is doing really well. I mean, all this like like really people dying is all red instead of using blood, which is absolutely fantastic. How sometimes people like shy away from that, especially in your big twos. But I think it's really like the move, like a scene scope where you kind of don't really get lost because of the colors, because you kind of know what this is one scene for them, and this is the imagination of blood scenes happening. So yeah, it's always like, and they like not afraid to use colors, which I absolutely love it. And now it's not like usually 1 or 2 color schemes or something like that. They're just very clever in using that, and I think it's the whole creative team. And it's like, because it's so long on the shelves of comic books, they tend to be forgotten, unfortunately. And it's a pity, because it's really good tale. I don't think if you read it in graphic novels, I think that would keep you like you want to know what's happening, and it was always going fast paced in a way, even though with a couple of breaks. But I think one of the best great moments in this comic book, that's when they were tripping the mushrooms in, I think it was Vegas. They went for the trip, they escaped, and it was such a beautiful color schemes used in this comic book that was like, wow, it's just right thing to use, like old schools and stuff. Is it? It's original colors. Oh, maybe I'm making something shit up.
Yeah.
I apparently.
Yeah.
I really was sure something changed.
Maybe he came and went back or something.
Maybe they had the breaks, but like sometimes like people had. But I think Westquake had like a couple of issues in 50 odd issue run a break from doing this comic book as well. So it's a commitment for him as well, and he's actually creating something new himself in September. So I'm probably gonna get hold of that because it's something obscure, his own creative stuff, but his art is just beautiful for me.
What I liked about the series was, let me go back. I guess when I came back to reading comics would have been, I guess, 2012, 2013. That was one of the first books I picked up. And I think there was a cover and of the uniforms. And I think like Damien, I went to Catholic school at one point. And something about the uniforms. And so I picked it up, but like Rasa mentioned, it was the artwork. I said, what is this? And I wasn't familiar with Remender at the time. So it's been a consistently good book, and the artwork is extremely strong. And one of the things I also like about it is I'm not one for nostalgia. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and in the 80s, right? And I know it's a big selling point for people. For me, I go the other direction when it's selling me that, right? So, right, that's why I've not watched Stranger Things. And this is independent of my litigation with Brian K. Vaughan, but the Paper Girls, for example, I tried to give it a shot, but unfortunately, again, there's all these kids and bikes. It's the 80s, and it's just very frustrating. So, but this book, what I like about it is that Remender's really good at treating teenagers in a realistic way. Now, sometimes Remender's accused of being very cynical in his writing. I think you have him, and you have like Lemire. Lemire, I think, is more of a sentimental writer, and it's fine. I mean, that's a strong point that people like. But for me, again, that's another issue I have with him. And but I like, I guess, the cynicism of the realism of Remender. So, but that's been a really good series, and it's I know Jared Osborne said he stopped reading it because something happened earlier in the series that just really bothered him. But I hope he goes back to it because it's really very, very good. And it was on hiatus for a little while. And when it returned, it took a twist that I did not see. I don't know if Rasa saw it, but it took a big twist in it, and I was just fascinated by it. And it's very engaging, and I'll be disappointed when it ends. But there is an end in sight, unlike another book, which is going to go on for 4 or 5
forever.
6 years. I won't say
Yeah.
It's amazing to be reminded how long ago this series started.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's been here since we've all been on YouTube.
Yeah. So
and I've been waiting for it to end to buy the trades. I think that was not a good move. It's too long of a wait.
Yeah, it's a bit long one for him. And he said in the letter pages in here as well, he's saying that we're going to end the way we actually foreseen to be ending the comic book, our way, because it's the whole point for him being frustrated with Marvel work or whatever work for Big 2 he was doing, that he never had to end the way he intended because there were always a rush. You always rush to do stuff for you, so you have to make up the time for what you were thinking the whole story would be. And even saying that, he's like, the one thing I recommend this work in Marvel, I always would say and recommend is X-Force. It's the best thing Marvel. It's just such a beautiful, and ending was great. And that's the thing in Big 2 comic book to have such story, and it was like more than 30 something issues or more, maybe 40 issues run, and it's beautifully done. And Apocalypse was inserted there as a child, which is something, it will be interesting because he's using a child in kind of that kind of power as well. So anyway, I like the series. That's why it continues for so long. I just always get because I used to get the breaks between because of like people take break for doing the comic book, and I used to go petrol. Did I miss it? I always say to my comic book guy, and he's like, "No, it's fine. You have your deadly class. Don't worry." So yeah.
Well, just to add that, to Ross's point, an acquaintance of mine who doesn't read comics that much anymore, but he's a big fan of that X-Force, if I remember.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And he always talks about it, and he doesn't like Deadpool because my understanding Deadpool appears in that, right?
Yeah, and Deadpool takes the big stage in that comic book, and he's actually portrayed as what you would expect the Merc to be, rather than a Merc we know now, with your breaking your fourth walls and all that stuff. He has this because he has a funny side in X-Force Run, and he has really dark side, which what you expect for him the character would be, of the amounts of things he has been dealing with. So yeah, it's one of the best renditions of Deadpool for me in that sense, because he has different personalities, you would think crazy, wacky, non-dying mercenary could be,
Yes, and that's why he liked the book. I think he didn't like Deadpool, but he likes him there. He likes the portrayal of Deadpool there, or as I call him Deadwool. And he's very popular at the comic shop where I'm at. I call him Deadwool, and I call the Hulk Woke, and it's not woke. And then the obsession over this Kang ever since that TV show. I mean, when I was a kid, no one cared about Kang and the Avengers. I didn't care.
Right.
But now everyone's a fan of Kang, so I call him Fang. And Tang, like Kang would be. So just to wind up some of the speculator collectors there, non-reader types.
Yeah.
In any event, it's an excellent series. Deadly Class is just yes, and I'll be disappointed when that ends. But in a way, I'm glad it's going to end and then reread.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. You want to see it where it goes.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a Deadpool manga.
What?
Ragamuffin says, I wonder how well the Deadpool manga sold.
Yeah.
Somehow we got on Deadpool because of
yeah, sorry, I mentioned
X-Force, yeah.
That was Deadpool's in the comments. Ambush Bug is better than Deadpool, Scott says. Which I'm not going to argue there. I still don't like Ambush Bug that much.
Yeah.
Personally. I won't hold it against you, Scott, if you love Ambush Bug.
Would you like me to share the screen here, Damien? Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, if you're ready for me.
Okay.
So this is probably very familiar to Gore.
Oh my God!
Not Gore. I just called you.
I remember.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, you go, Damien. Damien, you okay? Just
wow.
names I know we have problems with, but you good?
Wow. I'm sorry, Damien. I just remember exactly where I was when I picked that up.
Really, hey?
I'm sorry, Damien. Take it away.
Yeah, no. So yesterday with Justin, I was pulling out things from different eras of comics, and so I pulled out some issues of Epic, and I couldn't resist rereading some Barry Windsor Smith. So he kind of has 3 stories in here. They say 3 new stories by Barry Windsor Smith. It's really one main story, which is this odd sort of prose poem called The Beguiling, about a pure noble in the medieval ages who sort of wanders the gardens and ends up pricking himself on a flower. And then the flower sort of becomes intangible and an angel shows up. And he's so entranced by the angel, he just follows her through this wall and becomes part of the wall.
Oh, lovely.
And Epic made a mistake. They have this little E here, like the story's over, but then there's another page. But it's a beautiful thing to read. It's very abstract, and of course, it's beautiful art. And it definitely shows Barry Smith moving beyond his Conan phase into the kind of art style that we were familiar with him in the 80s and 90s. I think his art style in Monsters is another evolution, but I really love this art. I don't know if I have a lot to say about it, but I just really enjoyed, and I assume Smith did his own color here, and I even really enjoyed the lettering. There is one thing here where it says, where I did train as a young, and then where I did train as a young knight. So I don't know if that was a mistake by the letterist that was left in, or just on purpose. But anyway, I'd love to hear Barry Smith's explanation of this. But like, he wanders through the garden, he sees a noble woman who is spending time with a serf, and he says, you know, a schooling where noble maidens consort with serfs, but I choose not to concern myself over duly. Anyway, it's just an unusual thing. I wonder if it's the first thing that Barry Smith wrote himself, because I really respect his writing as he moved on. And I just love this image when his becomes a statue. I just love the way he draws it as a statue. And he clearly loves drawing these angel wings and stuff. I guess there's just a lot of joy of drawing in this. And then there's a kind of jokey silent 2-page thing called, in black and white here, called The Path of Stars, in which a child follows an angel out a window, and he's about to fall, and then she snaps her fingers, and these, I don't know if they're flowers or other things, hold the child up, but then they don't last, and the child just goes splotch down on the ground, and the angel goes, my bad. And that's the end of the story.
That's crazy.
So I don't know, that just seems like almost like a National Lampoon type of thing to me or something. And sorry it's so noisy in the background here. I don't know if you guys can hear that. And then he illustrates a sword and sorcery story by Archie Goodwin. And I didn't have time today to read the Archie Goodwin story. Epic is not available in collected editions because most of it was creator owned. So a lot of this individually got reprinted in different places. Some of it never got reprinted. At least I don't know of any collections.
I don't think so either. No.
Ever seen anything? So this actually takes us back to his Conan. I mean, it looks like Conan and Red Sonja here.
Yeah.
But it's I hope to read it actually, because I love the idea of a prose story with lots of little intense drawings throughout. I think now I realize these are probably clipped out from this larger picture. So that's how they stretched out their Barry Smith. But then another really interesting thing in here is this joke thing by Dave Sim. I really love this. It's Arnold the Assyrian, and here's a little Nemo type figure, and it's purely a quote, or almost purely a quote from the Robert E. Howard description of Conan. Know you, O prince, that between the years within the Black Tower crumbled ruins, and prior to the invention of the continuous action loom, it's kind of a joke on it, there existed a great unwashed age. Anyway, hither came Arnold the Assyrian. So I guess maybe the Arnold's version of Conan had come out by then. But it's not painting a nice picture of Conan. A thief, a raper, he's raping 3 women at once, a slayer, a ventriloquist. Hi, boys and girls, he's having the head say. Anyway, it's I love the combination of the little Nemo and the barbarian. And at the end, little Nemo is being spanked by his mother for reading this trashy fiction. So I haven't got a chance to reread this entire thing. I did appreciate I guess Gene Day died in 1982. He was very young. And he was just starting to be kind of a superstar at Marvel, I think, or in my mind, a superstar. So they had this little portfolio of his to celebrate his passing. Is anyone else a Gene Day fan, or it's probably just me?
Not as hardcore as you, but I do appreciate his stuff when he's popped up in some of the indie stuff. I think there was some stuff in Aardvark Vanheim put out that was great, like really, really great. and I've got those Epic. And as usual, when you show stuff like this, it's a good reminder to go back into those boxes and dig through.
Epics.
Yeah.
I mean, Epic's different from heavy metal. It's not as radical, but
Yeah.
it just has a lot of cool stuff in it.
Mhm.
And I personally think Gene Day was just reaching his best work before he died when he was doing Master of Kung Fu. So the indie stuff is kind of his journeyman work, sort of building up to that.
Mhm.
This may be from Master of Kung Fu there. Let's see. Oh, he's recreating a scene from Conan there.
That's looks
and
beautiful. I mean, though,
I think he was involved in a few of the early Star Wars comics too, perhaps.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
I
just
think
as an inker.
Yeah.
It was kind of a waste that Marvel at first just used him as an inker, because he's such a good at draftsman at laying out panels and
That looks
telling
wonderful.
interesting stories. Anyway, so I'm going to read some more clips later this week. I've been sort of knowing I wanted to dive back into my eclipses and putting it off for a long time. I'm not quite sure why. I just wanted just the right moment to truly enjoy it. But you end up waiting forever on all these books you stockpile, or I do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're quite difficult to get hold of. I mean, not difficult really, but like pricey as well. I mean, every single time I went into like where I live in UK, England, London, they're quite popular. I mean, because of course, Barry Smith is because, you know, like on those kind of names, they are like, especially all those like Mobius, I think, appeared in several of them and stuff like that, and that's just like difficult to get hold of. And Barry Smith is not easy to get hold of, or it is just pricey. Like some of them, £20 per pop is quite a lot, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad because I think I paid $3 to $5 a pop.
Wow, that's cheap, really. Then
That's really
apparently
good.
for a while, there was one issue that had Dreadstar as first appearance of Dreadstar, and that became like a key issue for a while. Although I think that's cooled down. But luckily, I got them all quite inexpensively. I might have paid more for issue 1. So I don't know if that's just the local market where you are, or if I was just super lucky.
I think it depends. Look, yeah, different locations.
I got a big lot of them, almost like, I don't know, I'd say easily half of the run for dirt cheap years and years ago. So I have a feeling it's, you know, getting them overseas and all that stuff, the scarcity of them.
In most places, they're under the radar for most collectors. Because people want things that fit into their smaller bags and boards, I think.
Yeah.
No, there was an excitement to that magazine, I remember. And I remember there was a convenience store in a small town that I lived in. And give you an idea, if you've ever seen the film by John Sayles, Lone Star, it gives you an idea of the type of town that I lived in. And our childhood was pretty much like the Bad News Bears, the original one. And so those were the type of kids that we were. Yeah, we were pretty bad. And the small town. But there was one convenience store that sold Epic, the Warren magazines, and comics, and that was also the shop, the convenience store where I got the heavy metal magazines when I wasn't supposed to buy them, but they ended up there. But I remember that issue and that story by Smith. I think that might have been my introduction to Smith. I think because I think shortly thereafter he did some X-Men books, a few, and that he drew with Storm, just beautiful work.
Oh yeah.
But there was an excitement to Epic every time I would pick that thing up. And it was consistently good. And that may have been also my introduction to Dave Sim. And because that would have been shortly thereafter when we moved to a city that had a comic book shop. And that's when I had seen Cerebus already in some trade magazines. Because I would also look through those at the convenience store. You know, some of it was over my head, but I would buy them and I would be excited. That's how I was able to order the independent stuff through the mail. And in any event, but Epic magazine, you know, I never see them here, and I don't know why, because again, they were very popular here, as were the Warren magazines. I guess people just keep these things, at least locally.
Yeah, I think so.
They just do, but it's there's nothing quite like it. And unlike Heavy Metal magazine, this was consistently good. It was rare to find even a bad story or just a weak story. And to my mind, I treasure those things. They're just absolutely beautiful.
Would you also say that it kind of went maybe more fantasy leaning as opposed to heavy metal's kind of
Yes, that's true.
sci-fi? You know what I mean? Yeah.
It was more fantasy though. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And also as a kid, see, it would have nudity also in it sometimes.
Mhm.
And so that's frankly, that's another thing. What I wanted to get the thing. And of course, once the heavy metal magazines ended up there,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to buy them for a few months until one day the clerk said, "You can't buy this," and
Mhm.
and I said, "Yeah, but it's over there." And he was just
Yeah.
looking at me as this psychotic, perverted kid. And of course, months after that, I would have a little stack of epics and Warren magazines and some
Mhm.
comics. And I would lean over the counter, Penthouse, Hustler, Swank,
Yeah.
the great literary
Yeah.
porn magazines, and there would be heavy metal, and I'd be thinking,
Yeah.
no, I need to read this, because of there. That's why I got introduced to Creepax. I mean, Mobius, Corbin, Menorah, you name it, right? So,
Mhm.
but yeah, it just frustrated me to no end, and I couldn't tell anyone I was reading the magazine. I couldn't ask anyone to buy it for me.
Right.
That would be
Because of the stigma or whatever.
trouble. I would be,
Yeah.
I'd be toast.
Yeah.
I mean, I had enough trouble confessing every Friday because you had to confess all these things, and so it was a very good altar boy. So
Yeah.
so the priest had fun with me. I have to say, the priest.
Yeah.
Had fun.
Not what kind of whoa, hey, hold on there.
Well, not that kind of fun. And
Yeah.
no. Although there was one, I have to say this, there was one priest, and we felt bad for him. He was a young priest. He was from Spain. Again, imagine that small town like in Lone Star. This man was from Spain. All the girls had a huge crush on him. They were
Mhm.
all in love with him. They were in elementary school, but I guess they were in love with him. But to be fair, I was in love with my 5th grade and 6th grade teacher, so it was normal back then. So in any event, he would play soccer sometimes outside. Not soccer. He would play like against the church wall on his own, like some kind of racquetball game. And after school, all the boys would just swarm him to play soccer. And you could tell this was his time, and we were taking it up. But he was always very nice. But he did something unusual with the confessionals. I've never seen a priest do this before. We would walk into the church, and he would be in the front pew. We would be at the end, at the back, and then we would walk all the way up there, and all of us would be visible to him, and with us and him in the confession. And he was always very nice. I don't remember ever him saying anything, why are you doing this? Why are you having these thoughts? Nothing like that. He was always very, very nice. And all of us really liked him. And then I remember one day, summer after summer, and I went back, and he was gone. He had been transferred out. And then I had to deal with the other bitter, angry priests. And there were some of them that were pretty angry, bitter. I think we still want to live in that small town. And they were all foreigners. That's another thing. They were all foreigners living in this very provincial town. And so who knows what it is, but in any event. But Epic is fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever confessed about comics when I went to confession.
Uh-oh.
Heavy Metal Magazine.
I'll have to go back and make up for it. But
Yeah.
my father was finding even worse things under my bed, which he insisted I confess about.
Not good.
My father liked to guide my confessions for me, tell me what I needed to go confess.
Right.
Well, the reason you had to confess this is the way it worked, the way we were trained, is that you lied to the priest, you're lying to God, because he can read our thoughts. So in a way, it was like a test. You tell the truth. It's like psychoanalysis. It really is. It really is a psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
Basically, because if you lie to the priest, God thinks, really? You're lying to me, buddy. You better tell him that you bought that magazine. You better tell him what thoughts you had about that magazine. So yeah. No wins.
You can't hide your thoughts from God.
He's such a
privacy there.
No. Let's just say, I knew a lot of Hail Marys for a long time.
Yeah.
So, which is I was like the Hail Mary. I was like those. And the rosary beads and stuff. So.
You got something for us there, Gore? You ready for the spotlight?
Oh, no, it's my turn. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
might as well get this out of the way. The elephant in the room. Okay? And when we're typing what name we wanted to use, I've joked about having a YouTube channel called Better Than Saga. So whenever I'm in the chats, for example, someone say, "Hey, Better Than Saga's here," but I'm not gonna do that. But let's just get this out of the way. Basically, as you know, Saga is back,
Oh.
right? This is the current issue. It was the first book I read when it came out, and I read everything else afterwards. So, of course, everything else was better after this. So, there's Saga, and of course, there's Saga number 1. And I tried reading the first dozen issues again, and well, that's a whole other thing. But just to get this out of the
torture
way,
yourself.
and just to get this out of the way, my thoughts on Saga. My friend Beth and, like I mentioned earlier, and Steven, they have a shop, comic shop down the street, and they got in some toys. And when I saw this, I had to get this. So basically, Saga's back. These are my thoughts on Saga, and that's where we leave it.
Brilliant.
So now let's talk serious comics.
Yeah.
That's for that. Okay. Just bear with me here.
Yeah, that's fine. We got time.
I think some of you recognize this guy here. In the early 90s, I went to see a film, and I went with a friend of mine. And if a friend of mine from Austin is watching, it wasn't who you think it is. It was somebody else. And let's say her name begins with your girlfriend's name, same name. And he knows her. So we went to see a film called The Comfort of Strangers. And it starred Christopher Walken, Helen Mirren, Rupert Everett, and I think it's Natasha Richardson. She's the woman who was married to Liam Neeson and the daughter of Vanessa Redgrave, one who passed away a while back. And it was directed by Paul Schrader. It had a script by Harold Pinter. And the music was by the composer who did the music for David Lynch's Twin Peaks, right? So I had seen a review of the film, and I asked a friend of mine, who was also a movie buff, to go see it. So we went to see the film. And as we're watching this, I'm thinking, this is not going to go well. So we leave the theater. And when we leave the theater, she just says, "This is the worst movie I've ever seen." And I looked at her and I said, "Weren't you the one who introduced me to Nabokov and Lolita?" And she goes, "Don't remind me of that." So, and for many decades afterwards, I would always remind her of that whenever I would object to something I was watching or something I was reading or something. I said, "Wait a minute, you were the one who in college told me, have you checked out Lolita by Nabokov? I think you might like that." So, so she goes, "Yeah." So in any event, it's a great film, and Walken is at his most sinister. I mean, I've never seen him in a role like this before. And basically, the premise of the film is you have a young couple who go to Venice, and they want to rekindle their relationship, and they encounter Chris, right, and his wife Helen Mirren, and so they, he says, "I'll show you around," but they don't know is that they've just entered a web. These people are like spiders, and what's about to happen to them is psychological, violent, it's erotic horror. It's going to take place, and of course, I like the film. It's something up my alley, and it was based on a novel by Ian McEwan, and it was a writer that it was the first time I read McEwan, and he was part of that British invasion from the 80s. Like Julian Barnes, it was him, Salman Rushdie, and essays like Christopher Hitchens. I know Best in Comics, he was a big fan of Christopher Hitchens. intelligence, and I like his essays too. But it was a part of that group. So in any event, I saw this, and you know, I'm getting to the comics. But this is the book here, The Comfort of Strangers, which is actually a line from Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, when at the end, after Blanche has been basically by Stan, Marlon Brando's character, and she's gone mad, and she's being taken to an asylum, and she takes the arm of one of the attendants, and she says, "I've always depended upon the comfort of strangers." So it's an ominous title for this book, and in any event. Around that time, I also began reading the books by Thomas Mann, and one of them was Death in Venice. I think some of you probably have read that or seen the film by Visconti. And in Death in Venice is about a man who falls in love with a boy, and in Venice, and he's obsessed about it, but he can't do anything about it. And at the end, he dies. So I mention all this because it has something to do with Sandman. It has to do with this book here, The Corinthian.
Oh.
This was a 3-issue miniseries.
Oh, nice.
I never
Yeah.
even knew of that one.
No.
Yeah, this one came out early 2000s. It's
Yeah.
done by Darko Makan and Daniel Gigel. I think that's how you say his name.
Mhm.
Gigel you might know because Earl Grey a few months ago did a review of Lunar Park, which was drawn by
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
this story here is basically an origin story of the Corinthian, how he got his name, and how he became a serial killer.
Mhm.
But I'm going to move here and see if I can do this without dropping everything I have over here. So, and it's called Death in Venice.
Oh,
And when we meet the Corinthian, what does he look like? Let me show it to you. Oh, there it is. Pretty much looks like Christopher Walken.
Mhm.
And what we meet a couple. Basically, there's 3 couples in this story, in this 3-issue series. And each one of those couples, by the end of the story, most of them are not going to survive. And those that do are scarred permanently.
Mhm.
First, it takes place in 1920 in Italy, obviously. And you see a young couple here. And this man here has just was in the war, the Great War. And he was on the French side. And for 5 years, he's been away from the woman he loved, and they're on their honeymoon. And so they're talking, and the Corinthian says he was also in the war. Because you may remember, the Corinthian appeared in Sandman, I think early on. But
Number 10.
there was a soldier in the first issue, a German
Mhm.
soldier, a young kid, a 14-year-old who was killed. And
Mhm.
basically, the Corinthian inhabited his body, and that's how he entered our world.
Mhm.
But it's a pretty contentious meeting. It's basically great, you're on your honeymoon, you're going to make babies, basically, babies to be killed for the next war, basically. And they take offense at this, obviously, and he slaps him. So, and then we meet the second couple. Now, it's interesting, this man here is an ancestor of Hellblaser's John Constantine. And I think he was a brother of John's grandfather. Now, this couple here, British, and that's his girlfriend. They play games. They're wealthy people who just like to play games. And she's obsessed with death. And she has a new name every day that she uses. And they're pretty vicious people. Like they find this homeless person here who's blind, and they're playing a game of who's going to kick him into the water. But he plays a pivotal role because he's the watcher of the series. And we're going to see him throughout. And eventually, they give him money. The police come here, and they say he's basically a panhandler. But then you see the Corinthian here, and they have a history. Let's see this. What's going to happen here is this man was in the war. oh yes, and then comes the last couple. These are the servants that work for the previous couple.
Mhm.
They're in love with each other, but the young man is basically the sex toy of the other girl, of the woman, and her husband's impotent, as we'll see why. And his girlfriend, she's wondering, what do you do with her in that room, and he goes, well, I'm doing it to save money for us. So the class system is prevalent throughout this. And now we get to what happened. Basically, the man during the war came across a young 14-year-old German soldier, and he's told by the officer to kill him, but he can't kill him. He doesn't want to. So the officer shoots him in the groin area, which is why he's impotent. And
Intense.
and then what happens is that, and this is the first appearance on Earth of the Corinthian. He inhabits the body of the boy,
Mhm.
because then the boy shoots the officer.
Mhm.
So the question is, why is he there? It's a very intense 3 issues.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
my understanding that I think Tinian, is going to do a Corinthians series or mini
Wow.
Mhm.
series. I think I saw that. But I think the standard is this book here.
I missed who the writer and artist are on this one.
Here we go. Writer is Darko Makan
Yeah.
and Daniel Giselle.
Huh. I haven't heard of either of them.
Mhm.
Looks really good.
Yeah, really
Um,
does.
And it sounds like it does not pull punches.
No, it does not. But it's also
Mhm.
referenced Death in Venice, because basically
Right,
is
which is cool.
that the British officer in the 20s, after the war, went to Berlin to study, and he fell in love with a young man. And now he's being brutalized because fascism is now emerging. They talk about this here. Fascism is emerging in Italy and in Europe. And they're beating up this poor guy. Now, he could actually, the guy he's actually in love with, but he doesn't do anything about it.
Wow.
Now, the Corinthian is known for taking the eyes out of people. And the reason he takes the eyes out is he puts them in him.
Yeah.
And you could look into the past of the person and the future they could have had.
Mhm.
So this man here was impotent. He's impotent in duty. He couldn't do that in the war. He's impotent with his wife, and he can't kill. And the Corinthian is here because he wants to understand. He wants to know how to become basically a killer. He wants to understand this. The Great War has already ended. There's an influenza epidemic. There's the rise in Russia. You had the Russian Revolution, the rise of communism, rise of fascism. And he already knows that the coming war in 20 years is going to be even bloodier than the first war. I won't reveal too much more, but it's a very intense issue, the rise of
Mhm.
Mussolini in Italy.
Yeah.
It's completely unsentimental in any way. It's something, Gaiman explores some of these themes in Sandman, but not to this degree. I don't know if it's the European mindset about this or what, but I can't see an American writer doing something like this or making it credible or believable. But
Mhm.
these are really relatively inexpensive to get, and the conclusion to these are just utterly, it's like The Comfort of Strangers. It's gonna be one of those things where, like my friend back in the '90s, you went to see this film, and at the end says the worst movie I've ever seen. It could be a reaction to some readers. This is the worst comic I've ever read. Not because it's bad, but because it provokes certain things in our minds, and it leaves you with, I hate that word. It's not closure. There is an ending, and I think it's fine, but it's not what you would want. So I found the Corinthian, and it came out. The date on this thing. December 2001.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when I
Again.
was not paying attention at around
Yeah.
I just found some cheap copies on my comicshop.com and added them to my basket and caused Gore to
Sorry, one
be
second.
disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Sandman.
There you go.
You need to have them. I mean, if you're a Sandman
Apologies.
person, you can have them.
Sorry about that.
You just kick him out.
I did accidentally. I apologize.
You
Sorry,
got kicked
Gord.
out for
I
a
clicked
moment.
the wrong
Gore.
button. So we
Yeah.
missed the beginning part of your last sentence there. Try that
Who, me?
again. Yeah.
Oh, what did I say? I said this is an essential for Sandman people.
Right.
I mean, you need to have this because this basically goes into, again, why he's called
Yeah.
Corinthian.
Yeah.
The Watcher is actually the one who names it.
Mhm.
And there's a passage in here where the Watcher says he met the Corinthian during the Russian Revolution. And there's a passage there when there's extreme poverty and people are eating horse flesh, raw horse flesh.
Mhm.
And this young man, he believed in communism. He believed this was something that was going to happen. He meets the Corinthian, and the Corinthian has already killed somebody. No, he's come across a dead man and taken out his eye, a commissar. And he says, "Do you want to see the future?" And he goes, "Well, okay, well, give me your eye, because your eye is untainted." So the Corinthian with the blade takes his eye, and he puts the commissar's eye into him. And now this young man sees the future. He sees people hanging from poles. Basically, what's going to happen in Russia, what's going to happen in Germany, what's going to happen in Europe. And then this young man has basically like Oedipus. He gouges out his other eye because he can't bear what he just seen. All his idealism, all his hope for humanity is dashed.
Yeah.
And so again, he recurs to the very end of the series of the storyline. But it's so in any event, when I read this comic, I mean a while back, immediately, first in the white suit, hey, that's Christopher Walken. Death in Venice is another comic man story, but they're all indirectly referenced here. And I have to think that they've seen the film or they've read the novel by McEwen.
Yeah.
And I just think so. They just had to have done it. So, but
right.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, you don't just stumble into things like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Corinthian in Sandman series came out in issue 10, so he was quite early introduced in the Sandman lore. So if you do, those speculators wants to know that. Anyway,
You're helping the speculators?
Yeah.
Just
is
saying,
this our market
like we are
report
mentioning.
time?
No, it wasn't. Yeah. No,
Are you about to
you're
sell
right.
your copies?
No, that's the way it works. I'm at the shop with my friends have. You have now says the first appearance of a name, the first origins or the origin story, the first appearance of two characters on the cover.
Yeah.
And I said, at one point, what do you have? The first cousin of Bruce Banner's first appearance? Is this where we're going?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
That's where we're going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why not artist here?
Tony, why not art? Long time.
Jeez, where's your videos, Tony? Come on, man.
Oh, One Night Art.
Tony posts a lot on Instagram, though.
Yeah, I
has
never
a lot
One Night
of
Art. It's been a long
drawings
time.
and stuff up there.
Yeah, I would love to
Great
see
guy.
his videos.
Yeah. Yeah, we do miss his videos.
That was great. Thank you very much for that, Gore. That was awesome. Just on the eye theme, is that also a poster of X, the man with X-ray eyes behind you there?
Yeah, I think.
That X?
Oh, this?
Yeah, that big poster there with the big X on it. I thought that was
Mr. X.
Oh,
This
oh okay. Okay.
Yeah, Nandis Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, and so is that one there. So this one fell, so I have to find a spot for it. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So for now, what thing is, how Jared Osborne usually has like 2 comics on his work stand. For me, I just have to have more than 2 comics. So this changes throughout. So yeah, it depends on my mood, and they'll stay there, and so yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never bored ever.
Now I want to read Sandman again because of Gore. I stopped for a while because I took a break from reading it. And then now you're talking about the Corinthian. I remember, I don't know if I'm right, but in Sandman series seems to be that everybody was afraid of Corinthian. He's the guy who's just like, oof.
The scariest of all.
Yeah, because of the way he was portrayed in the comic books as well. And it's just like those eyes, taking the eyes out is just, that's just another step.
I imagine if Tinian does a book, it'll be a more traditional horror, I would think.
Mhm.
I think so,
than the
yes.
more literary thing with the harder edge that you've presented there.
And to be fair, it might be good. To be fair, and
Yeah.
and
Oh, he's good at traditional
reason-
kind of horror stories.
be the standard. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's going to be the standard for me, unfortunately. Just like the
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
I'm having now with the new Electra book by Zdarsky, I think I commented is when I read the Zdarsky Electra book, the new ones, they're okay, but they read like young adult literature.
Yeah.
The way they treat Electra, it's kind of cutesy. And one of the ironies is in the 80s, when we were still reading comics, kids were still reading comics. Maybe Frank Miller had an adult audience in mind, but he also knew that kids were reading this comic. So,
Mhm.
in a way, they were treating the kids with much more respect. That hey, we want
Mhm.
adult stuff too. And
Yeah.
so it's been very almost impossible for me to appreciate fully an Electra story that hasn't been done by Frank Miller or by Bill Sienkiewicz, because as you guys know, Electra Assassin is my favorite
Mhm.
work by either man.
Mhm.
And Zdarsky referenced that Electra, an origin, a scene in the current Electra book of Electra. She's a little girl,
Mhm.
and it's almost very much drawn like Sienkiewicz's is in Electra Assassin, but the way she talks is not the same. It's again, it's cutesy, and that's not the way. Again, it is by Miller, and so it's almost like we've gone back. Although we should go forward.
Mhm.
So that's a whole other thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want you to subscribe.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot. You know, they treated us kids reading comics a little bit more grown up than they now do. And then they have their whole line of kids comics, which are extremely I don't know, treating kids as if they just should read formula fiction, basically.
Mhm.
Because I read some of these DC ones that they do for kids with my daughter, just because we can get them for free on Hoopla and read them before bed.
Mhm.
Like they had an Amethyst one. Amethyst was always sort of a kid's book, but boy, did they make it like just a really bland little kids book when they redid it for their new DC kids line.
Yeah,
It's pretty sad.
for sure. But I mean, that all that stuff comes from a place, I think, though, right? You know, I think it comes from a place of if you do challenging stuff, it's sometimes a little more difficult, right? And for a company that's focused on just making money, they're going to take that easy path out where it's going to be the path of least resistance to some degree, right? Because you just want to get those sales, just maybe a different focus as opposed to storytelling and ideas, whereas just otherwise it's a money grab. We just want to get as many kids, shovel them in by the armful. So that way we just do very base level, sometimes writing to make sure that
Right.
we can get as many views as possible, right?
Well, my take is DC is now run by a big corporation.
Yeah.
And they used to be run at least like a smaller business.
Mhm.
And so now someone in a boardroom says, let's just hire these experts
Yep.
on writing books from kids from 12 to 14.
Yeah.
And they'll apply their formulas to these.
Correct. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's what I'm seeing, as opposed to kind of a, you know, when the original Amethyst books came out, it was just some guys who pitched an idea to DC and then they let them do it.
Right.
And they did their best with it. But anyway, what Gore was saying just made me think of that. Of
Yeah,
the
no,
books
for sure.
that I've
Yeah.
looked at
No,
with
no,
my
yeah.
daughter. And I think your daughter is reading some of those DC books. They're not all bad.
She is.
But
Yeah.
some of them that I've read with my daughter just struck me. Boy, this is not, you know, not trying to challenge the kids at all, or not
Yeah.
respecting the kids as
A little bland. Yeah. Totally.
ability to try different things. But
Yeah.
anyway.
So off of that,
Follow that.
looking at my stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Damn it.
You better come up with something interesting there, okay?
Maybe some
so I
furry
got-
freak brothers or something.
Yeah, exactly. Something with boobs in it. So I read issue 1 of Ashley Dust, and our friend Russ Works, in the last kind of video that I did last Sunday where I mentioned it, Russ Works, as he usually does, is he puts a lot of fantastic info about some of the books, and he really zeroed in on this one. This creator Rick McCallum, sorry. apparently started this kind of like mini comics, undergrounds, that sort of era. And kind of, it was one of the characters that he really just elaborated a lot on the world. And even I think Russ was saying that in the comment there that even within the last couple of years, he's still done some comics. He got involved with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for a few issues. He did I think it was also, this is from Night Press. I think from Night Press, he also did a Robert E. Howard book as well, which Russ is saying, you know, good luck on getting your hands on that one. When he's seen it, it's been pretty pricey. This was it really felt like diving into a pretty established world where there were some things that he does a pretty good job at trying to catch you up to what's going on. She kind of, Ashley Dust has this kind of path to hell, basically, through this garden where she can kind of communicate with people that are in hell. People like H.P. Lovecraft, for example, who are kind of inhabiting this garden area, and kind of warning her to some of the denizens of hell have crept out through the garden and into her world. So she, you know, gives her kind of her mission of trying to go and catch these other denizens. They don't detail it too much about who's there, so she gets some extra help from some of the people that also inhabit it. This guy here, whose name is, they do a nice thing at the end. He's Gonar, I believe is his name. They do a nice kind of thing at the end here where they give you some extra information, some of the characters that they're talking about. He doesn't go into too much detail about the history here, but he does give you a little bit of extra. It's always nice. Like it's one of those books where there isn't any ads. I'm wondering, the only ad is on the inside back cover, and the rest is just filled with content, which is fantastic. So his art is the thing that drew me in the most. It has kind of a Joe Coleman feel. And then there's this guy, Charles Dallas, who did some books, some underground comics, Psychotic Adventures, I think is what it was called. And it really reminds me of that style. It has this really, you know, you squint your eyes and you look at that page, and there's, except for around the borders there isn't much white space. And some of the pages, even with the text, when I posted some photos on Twitter, one of the comments was about this page here where the kind of text is traveling all the way around the border of the page, as well as then getting into detail on the page. But I love kind of this hyper detailed, not in like a Jeff Darrow kind of way of just, we're just going to create this world, and all this foliage and stuff I think works incredibly well to offer those layers. So I mean, overall, it was an interesting story. It absolutely made me want to continue on and see if I can find anything else. I think there was only 2 issues of this one published by Night Press. I did see that they had it. I can't remember if they were in stock or not on My Comic Shop, but they did have them listed there. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's, again, because I feel like there's a lot more before this. I'd love to dig into this artist and see what else he has, and see what he's doing now. And, you know, again, like, it feels like the Turtles guys, that one of the most, they did so many incredible things with that book, but one of the most incredible things they did was opening up those characters to some of these other creators to offer their interpretation. So I'd love to find out which issues he did and have a dig. Yeah, and Tony is mentioning his place, the Koch Warehouse in New York there, which, man, I've seen some of the videos of that place, and that would be an incredible place to dig in. More than likely, they'd have multiple copies of something like this. So just have a closer look at that page there too.
Oh, that's the front.
Yeah, that's the one that I used.
Yeah. I was thinking, where's that from? I was like, I'd never seen this before.
Yeah. So it was very engaging. A dense read, though, absolutely a dense read.
Yeah.
But I felt like I got enough information to sort of follow the basics of it. But again, it's that world building that some of these creators do that's just so impressive, that clearly this is something he's thought about for a long time and really put some work into. So very intriguing issue number 1 there. What year? This one was 1994 is when this one came out. So dig in your dollar bins, I guess, the dollar bin pick, if you have them, if you have access.
Yeah.
Your dollar bins are better on Canada, Terrence, as you down here.
It seems to be sometimes, absolutely.
Never seen anything like that. Very nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff to look at. And these companies that were just an absolute, because the quality is there as well too, like the paper stock for even the cover, this glossiness to the cover, like I don't think they put out very much, and they probably didn't last very long, but it's incredible that all of these places were allowed to kind of pop up and just kind of put their voices out there. Is pretty impressive.
Very cool. And that Pirate Girl comic book, you're definitely gonna love that borders and that panels of the written.
Oh man.
Yeah, you're absolutely gonna go. Yeah, Cursed Pirate Girl.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet. I was saying to Rasa before we kind of started today, one of the shops had multiple copies left, so I'm really glad that I got one in my hands, because just doing even just a little basic flip through, incredible. And the first thing I went to was that center spread, just to kind of see. It's just beautiful stuff, man. Really amazing. I can barely wrap my head around how some of these guys create this stuff, the level of focus that must take, and just cutting everything out in your world to kind of just focus on these minute details. It's very, very impressive.
Yeah,
we'll see how it reads, I guess.
One thing about the Cursed Pirate Girl that I forgot to mention anywhere was I noticed from the earlier Cursed Pirate Girl to now, he has now integrated the lettering as part of the art.
Exactly.
So sometimes the lettering will splash down into the next picture and things like that.
Okay.
So the lettering is serving a bunch of different purposes, but it's definitely as much a visual element as anything else.
Part of the design.
I thought was there's so much other detail to take in. I forgot to even think about that, but I thought that was a really cool thing he did.
I think the first things he done it already was amazing, but now he's just it's just evoking more of his passion to what he's doing, even more. I guess maybe time has given him that kind of thing, like, because he said it was like taking him forever to do this stuff, but you can see it, and it's so nice, especially the company who can produce the comic book in that kind of like print, like in such a great way to see in single format.
The paper and everything.
Yeah, we were talking about that to Terrence as well, saying like the paper, it's just stunning to see that in single format comic book.
Totally.
Because what you tend to do, like you see in graphic novels, they take more time with the paper and stuff like that, and longevity of that kind of thing. But in comic books, it's like, take it out, show the public, see if you like it, and then we can churn out some graphic novels, which is amazing in itself. So.
Well, and even
really
just the smell of the book, like we were talking about before.
Yeah, it has its own smell.
It's incredible. It's an amazing experience, Yeah.
Yeah. And Rick Ray is saying how it's a dense read and takes a long time to get to each page. But I found I could literally read each page a different way.
Yeah.
I could read this way, and then I could read that way.
Right.
I just like
it's a really innovative, not just fancily drawn, but really innovative kind of thing.
And I'm glad that he didn't give up and he just continued doing that.
True. It's amazing. How did he
commitment
find the time to do all that? Because obviously it's not paying his bills.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah. Yeah, very impressive.
But it's difficult to see that sometimes in the commitment. You all at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself, and if you have a family as well. So, but this is proper saying, like, I really care what I'm doing, and I want people to see this, and it's just so beautiful to behold of that and stuff. Like, I guess our special guest disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, you're up there, Rasa.
Yeah, so I'll talk while nothing. I had a kick for Deadpool, so I wanted to get into. So the comic book I was saying to you prior, this one with Keith Giffen art in it. It was actually the end of the storyline, so that's why I was baffled by it. So I couldn't explain to you. So I actually don't have the previous stories, like issues to this. Gaps in my comic book collecting still, and like you get distracted by everything else. But anyway, so I wasn't really I couldn't get into the story that much. I just was wandering through given the art. However, I had following, so speculator time again. So Daredevil 248 apparently is the first appearance of Bushwhacker, and he is a prominent character in here, and it's his actually storyline. But if that doesn't suit your palate, of course we have a Wolverine to appear. So if that's not good enough, Wolverine will basically make it all better for you. Anyway, I was just
Cha-ching.
But anyway, it is first. Yeah, exactly, Mark and Paul. I was surprised, to be honest. I was like, oh, "Who's this Bushwhacker?" So because I never heard of him before in Marvel comic books. So of course I had to go with Wikipedia or whatever that Google will say to me what it is. And apparently, it is his first appearance. So if they're gonna come up with the story right, anyway. So I'm dwelling into the Ann Nocenti's world in Daredevil because I'm kind of really wanted to see what is all the fuss about, because I was reading earlier Daredevil issues from previous creators, of course, but Ann Nocenti is quite prominent in Daredevil world, so of course I have to give a chance. So I was looking through my comic book collection, and it comes in 2 issues, so the storyline itself, so 248 and 249. And this Bushwhacker is basically the one which basically makes Daredevil and Wolverine to kind of fight for, in a way. And then yes, it is Leonardo's art. So with Leonardo, who's famous for New Mutants, lots of things. This guy has been doing everything, it seems to be in Marvel, even
He's
in
a
DC.
good artist.
Yeah, and Batgirl he was doing, which I was like baffled. I looked it up as well. I didn't know that Batgirl had him in art sense, because very familiar art to like, it seems to be, I've seen it before, and it's really definitely great to look at. So it starts, the storyline starts off, apparently this Bushwhacker character, he has he used to be a priest. Talking about the priest now. So he used to be a priest, and he decided to forgo his priest duties and decided to go to join CIA, which is like, what? Why would you go there? But anyway, so he does join it, and while he's joining them, they gave him this special ability where he turns his hand into a machine gun, a shooting gun. Anyway, and then apparently he gets paid for killing mutants. And in here we have a story of Daredevil basically struggling to be a lawyer, and apparently he lost his license in the story. I don't know, maybe I, as I say, missed previous issues yet to read, but so Daredevil doesn't have a lawyer's license. He's now just going as a like vigilante and trying to get away with that, but he's finding it very difficult to go through both of that. And Bushwhacker comes into scene because of his wife. He's coming to Daredevil's this like a helping shop kind of thing, where he's giving his sort of like illegally giving his lawyers a sense of ability about the law and the people's rights. And his wife comes in there asking for their help, how she can basically help him, because she thinks that her husband is insane. And her husband's insanity is because he's basically killing mutants, and that's how Wolverine gets involved. So Wolverine doesn't like to, of course, seeing his fellow mutants being killed. But there's one scene I want to show you. Really love this panel. As you can see, Kingpin. Such a really great portrayal in one panel of Kingpin. One of the great things about Leonardo's art in here as well. So anyway, so Wolverine gets involved, and because Bushwhacker is killing all the mutants who has like abilities like musicians, artists, basically whoever he thinks is undeserving to live by, I guess. And I really like the way Leonardo is drawing Wolverine here for sure. And of course, this classic cover, like classic costume, of Wolverines is what I really like. I guess it's debatable as well. Lots of people saying there's lots of, costumes the Wolverine have, but this is a great page as well in here. So this is one of the murdered mutants of Bushwhacker. So anyway, Daredevil and Wolverine gets into the fight because of him, because of course Daredevil's trying to save him, because we're not the people, we're not the killers, and Wolverine's fed up because it's like every corner he turns and he kind of basically get hold of him, and then that's why they start basically fighting with each other. It ends up not being really good. Spoiler alert, I guess. Still, Wolverine gets hold of him, like injures him, but I think from injuries he dies. Apparently, I think. But in comic books, whoever dies, even the killers don't really die, and that's quite crazy. Look at this profile of Ralph Macchio. Really look at this. It's so beautiful. I was like, what is this? I guess apparently they
That's
have
a big nose.
Yeah, bullpen bulletins have introduction to like creators or profile on that kind of thing. So
Right.
Anyway. Yeah. Fantastic Daredevil 2-issue storyline. Absolutely loved it. There's Karen in here, and apparently Karen was they were a couple in here, so very prominent in that storyline. But fantastic little 2 storylines. I don't think it's this comic book in particular for first appearance will kill your budget, but just to tell you, just to let you know, my duty to you guys, just to tell you that. Anyway, you're very good.
Thanks.
I loved it. Like it's another thing why it just reassures how much I like Daredevil in general, your storylines, because they get involved with other characters, not only him, like me. So those kind of like Wolverines comes in, crazy characters like Name Bushwhackers comes in there and does the storyline. But yeah, so far Anno Sentis run, whatever I've just managed to like just scrape by, it seems to be very good. Very good.
Very cool.
Yeah, one thing about the Nocenti run, which I particularly like, is back to Karen and the development or the exploration of that relationship, Karen and Matt. I remember when Miller did the Born Again series, it was either in the comic, the final issue, when Matt and Karen are walking down the entire page, right? They're just walking down the street, and Matt's smiling. He's smiling, so happy. And either Miller somewhere in the comic or maybe afterwards said, he's probably responsible for this, but Matt's life has been so unhappy, right? And he wanted to give him some happiness at last. And then Anne continued that, Stanley. So that's why it became quite a big shock to me in the early 2000s when Kevin Smith, did away with her. And it was like, what? Up is down, down is up. I mean, why? And I don't blame Kevin, right? DC, Marvel allowed it. That's a whole other thing, right? And so I'm thinking that why did they have to, kill her off? And but yes, those issues, and it's also the Romita artwork. I know it was Donardi, but this is one of the times that I actually like Romita on the comic. I liked it when he was on Daredevil, Romita Jr. And of course, Donardi, I discovered in Cloak and Dagger. It's beautiful, but
yeah, exactly. He's been done that. I'm gonna get like a next issue. I think it's JR's 250. So it's the big issue, but it's unfortunately it's gonna be tie-in, as you probably have seen in the panels of one of the comic book I'm showing. This Fall Mutant event happened apparently, so there's a tie-in with Daredevil. So I'm gonna still read it as double issue. We'll see how I'm gonna get lost in that sense, because I honestly haven't, even though as a fan of X-Men, I still haven't read that as many storylines yet. So we'll see how far I am getting lost in that issue, but I'll report it in my findings in the future videos. Yeah.
That was the one kayfabe interview that I watched recently, this JR interview they did. And one of the things that he says in there about just kind of continually just getting shit on by other artists, as he was working at Marvel, kind of the taste that put in his mouth after a while.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it seemed to be that's partially where it came from. Yeah, absolutely. And that he wasn't very talented, and just the drive that it gave him, which is, it's good that he had that positive spin on it, but I can't imagine.
How difficult that would be. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I read an interview. I saw an interview with Frank Miller. You guys are probably familiar with this. Yeah. That when he started out, he went to Neil Adams' house, and he took him some of his drawings. He called and He said, sure, come on over. And when he showed up at Neil's house, Neil looks through this. Is not nice at all. And at one point asked Frank, where are you from? Vermont.
Mhm.
Go back and pump some gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and he was serious. He was serious.
Yeah.
And so Frank says, I was in tears.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I did this. Miller said, paraphrase, he says, so can I come and see you next week? And so he would make these little treks to be abused by Neil. You would come in and look at how terrible his stuff was. There's no way he can get a job for Marvel, any of the companies. He would trace, he would take his drawings, put some other paper over it, and then correct it.
Right.
But he kept persevering, and finally at one point, Adams called, I think it wasn't Marvel, DC, it was one of the other publishers, and got him a gig. But yeah, I mean, where you from? Vermont. Go back and pump some gas.
That must have been the culture with the artists back then, that they were tough on each other, and you had to pass through this rite of passage.
The gauntlet.
It's the culture in so many. It's the
It was
culture
the
in our
70s.
industry. It's the same thing.
There.
There's people do it now in our membership, and I've never really understood it to the full degree. Yeah, they feel that that's what it has to be, a trial by fire. Like, if you're serious, this shouldn't stop you, and if it does stop you, then you weren't good enough, and you didn't mean it, and you didn't have the drive, and et cetera, right? So yeah.
I wonder how many would last in this, like in these day artists would be jumping in the past and have to go through all that kind of stuff. Right. How many would they actually survive? That would be crazy.
Well, Raga has a good comment about how many careers have ended before they started with comics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky that Frank Miller had the kind of personality that made him keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely imagine there's some talented people who just went and did something else.
Yeah,
probably not pump gas.
Yeah.
Jared has been part of that culture, so he knows the infamy of those Neil Adams. But I think, from what I understand, Neil Adams was a conduit that would bring people who did pass his test. He would bring them over to the Marvel or DC offices to get jobs. So it's an interesting way how that all worked.
Right.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, I'll get you set up there, and then I'm gonna get
Speaking
myself
of
some
Neil
ice.
Adams,
I'll be back.
I have been delving further into the wacky world of 1967, 1968 DC Comics. So previously, I think I talked about issue 2 of the Spectre, and now I have issue 4 and 5. And Neil Adams, first of all, I so love this cover. It's like perfect, crazy, yet realistic Neil Adams. Like the way this boy looks much more real than your typical comic book boy, but that pose is so, over the top. And of course, this Spectre being punched out is over the top. But I don't know how it worked, because it seems like rarely did artists get to be writers, but Adams has already taken over as the writer of the Spectre here. Before it was Gardner Fox, who had that very traditional old school way of writing comics, and now it's Neil Adams writing.
Wow!
Stop that kid before he wrecks the world. I wonder if part of the editors wanted things that involved kids. But it's really about some evil force that comes to Earth and takes over this kid's body and creates all sorts of horrible things happening, like giant locusts there, and there's all this sort of tortured stuff about his parents and them not trusting the Spectre and worried he's going to hurt the kid. And then the Spectre splits in two, and let's see if he even shows it visually. Oh, there it is. Here he is splitting in two, and so one of them stays on Earth to fight the kid who's been taken over by this evil force, and the other one follows the mystic antimatter forces left behind by the evil creature back to other planets where he had been. And the Spectre comes to this planet with endless war, and he says, there's no good here, no last vestige of good left in this world to build from. So he can't fix that world. And then somehow the evil thing keeps the two parts of the Spectre from communicating back with each other so that he can defeat them. But anyway, essentially, it does allow Neil Adams to draw all these wild and crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
But the plot is so sort of disjointed. But ultimately, the Spectre's left with a choice of killing the kid or letting him rampage and kill more people. But the Spectre decides. So there it is, the boy or the world. He has to choose this boy or the world. And he chooses the boy. And that was the right answer. Then the evil spirit leaves the boy. That this evil spirit wins when people choose, you have to do evil to make good. You have to kill some people to save the rest. And if you choose not to do any evil at all, then this evil spirit loses. Otherwise, he takes worlds and takes all the good out of the worlds completely. But that's what the evil spirit looks like. So I felt like Neil Adams is trying to explore something complicated there. And I wonder what happened that they stopped in later years, like just a few years after this, I don't remember any comics written by Neil Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Did he write some of the Dead Man too, I think?
Yeah. He was writing quite a few of them, actually.
And this one, the next issue, is even more sort of hard to follow what's going on. But essentially, there's a guy who steals some mystic thing, and by the end of the story, he turns out to be some DC villain who. Mm-hmm. But part of his evil plot is to make some guy turn giant and shoot beams of anger at people. I never understood why that was. So I can imagine, I think Neil Adams is very bitter, like at Roy Thomas. When they collaborated, he felt the stories were mostly his, and Roy Thomas felt the stories were mostly Roy Thomas's.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these public fights about it. I can imagine that Neil came up with these semi-coherent ideas, and then Roy or other writers took them and molded them, and so that both could think they're their own ideas. Anyway, I really enjoy these because of the Neil Adams art. But
he always has some interesting camera angles. You know what I mean? There's a lot of shots he has kind of looking up at things. He's got a unique sense of it.
Yeah. It's almost like he's showing, hey, I can draw this from any angle. I can do it any way you want. I can make it exciting in new ways you haven't thought of.
I think it's just how he's advertising himself as an artist to others.
Right.
Look what I actually can do. And show me yours, I'm bigger, or show me mine.
There was in another issue, there was an interview with him. That was the Spectre interviewing Neil Adams, but it was actually written by Neil Adams. And Neil Adams was 25 years old at the time.
Wow.
And he had already for 3 years had his own newspaper comic strip based on a TV show. And he'd already worked in advertising. He'd been working in professional art, I think, since he was 16 or 17. Mm-hmm. He said when he started his contract with the newspaper comic strip, if it had been a day or two earlier, his parents would have had to sign the contract, not him, because he was so young. Mm-hmm. But his birthday happened, and then he was able to sign the contract himself. But so he was a wonder child of a sort. Even 25 is not that young, but still, to be kind of the dominant visual force in comics at age 25 is pretty amazing.
And also never been afraid to experiment in form. Look at Expector, one panel above there where his hands are overextending, and that's not easy, to just pull off. I don't think a lot of artists have guts to just go and wild, but the guy has so much belief in himself, and that's why look, the guy in 25 is able to do this and show off his work. So up for that.
Yeah, like they're talking about the up the nose that is famous for Gil Kane. Neil Adams did a good up the nose too, not quite as often as Gil Kane. As a kid, though, I spent hours trying to imitate the up the nose drawings of Neil Adams. Actually, now I'm trying to see a good example of that, but
his hand drawing technique is really good as well, which is
ridiculous.
Yeah, like other people struggle with hands, or look at that foot there. He's just all the things that most artists find hard to do. He does them in spades. He just puts them everywhere. So yeah, he kind of exploded on the scene. There wasn't that. So it's interesting with him critiquing someone like Frank Miller. There wasn't. There was seemingly, when he arrived in comics, there wasn't that apprentice stage. Because these are, a few months before these, he was doing those Jerry Lewis comics that I showed you guys last time. In fact, he might have still been doing the Jerry Lewis comics at this point. So anyway, it's really cool. And, outside of his Batman stuff, I think you can get most of his DC work for pretty good prices.
How old is Neil Adams?
Very cool.
How old is what?
Neil Adams now.
Well, I mean, if I could do math well in my head, he was 25 in 1967.
Oh, shoot. My math
he must be in his 80s.
Yeah. Must be.
Oh, no. Late 70s?
40, 60.
Hasn't he had some health problem just recently?
80s, 90s, 80s, 85, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the frustrations with in the sense that there's films and books and comics, right? And no matter what anybody says, comics still, at least here in the US, the medium is not equal to them and the perception of the general public. And like I tell people who just look down on the medium or they're condescending, I say, look, here's a pin. Now draw me a story. I'll make it simple. I'll give you the plot. Boy meets girl. Boy loses girl. Boy goes to live on the moon. And now I'll do it. Now you have a deadline. Make it believable.
Yep.
Let's go. And it's not so easy, is it? No, it's not. Now, it doesn't really change their minds. But, when you see stuff like that, 25-year-old is cranking this stuff out. And then when you look back how much Kirby did, he was a machine. It's just the frustration that I always have with people who, now they're conflating the economic value of the comics as if now they're valid. But no, it's just the value, it's like a commodity. It's not the substance of the writing. That's just it. And it's just.
Yeah.
It's funny you're talking about commodity. It's for the first time my mom has mentioned comics to me. It's like, what? So we're having this general conversation, and she's like, you know your comic books, that room you have and all this stuff. Do you know they're getting in value? I was like, what? Did you just say that? She never mentions it. She never even talks about it because I don't know. It's like when it comes to, I even talk subjects with my mom. I have seen this live chats I mentioned a couple of times, but I was stumped. Honestly, I was like, I didn't know what to say afterwards. Like, really, mom, we talk about value of my comic books.
Money talks. People who don't give a crap about an art form suddenly, it must be good. Someone wants to pay $1 million for it.
That's right.
And then maybe some comic fans internalize that and say, well, this stuff that people say is junk is not, because I can make it valuable.
And also it's good because
right.
And that's the thing.
Nonsense.
I was like, I wanted to try to sell to my mom, so actually you should read some stories I'm actually reading. It will actually blow your mind. And she's like, maybe. And that's it. This stops the conversation.
Yeah, Jared is mentioning the argument between Neil Adams and Roy, and at some point they made it very public. I can't remember where it was, if it was on Facebook or somewhere a few years ago. They were just saying really nasty things about each other in public. So years later, they're still both bitter about it.
Right. Mr. Vidal, it is your turn. What do you have for us?
Well, something that is something a little bit more upbeat than the other story. So
that wouldn't be hard, I assume.
No. Remember when this one came out a few years ago? I did a video about this Batman annual. Date Night / Rise by Tom King.
Mhm.
And
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
by which basically is Batman and Catwoman age together, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Too much.
it was I did a video about it. I really liked the story very much, and it was wonderfully painful. And we see the death of Bruce at the end,
Yeah. That was good.
and beautiful panels of them, aging together, and the beautiful ending, where he leaves a note from the kitten, And the reason I mention is because about a couple of weeks ago, this one came out, also by King. I think it was supposed to be a Christmas special. It should have come out before Christmas, but it just came out at least at our shop about 2 weeks ago. But it's also the last work that John Paul Leon worked on.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I love his work.
And he only drew about 14 pages. Then Bernard Chang and Sean Crystal did pages 14 through 20. And then Mitch Gerards did 21 through 38. And the script is by Tom King. Now, this one's a companion piece to this one. But now we see it from every Christmas. Well, not every Christmas, but every couple of years. It's a story of Selena. And when we meet Selena, she's in a dumpster. And she's found by Kitty, which is why she's so fascinated by cats.
Yeah.
And then she's at an orphanage. Can you guys see it there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, he's at an orphanage.
It looks good. It's quite visible.
Again, this is all Leon. And it's her introduction. She's a portrait of Bruce Wayne and his family. And then when everyone is crying one day, it's news that the parents have been killed. So she's already having a connection to Bruce, even though she's never actually met him. So we see her, again, this is all Leon at this point.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow.
As she escapes from the home. And now her early life as a thief. Oh, there. And when she's in juvie, she's got a kitten hidden in there. And this person says, if you don't give me the half of your food, I'm going to turn you in. And Selena's not going to have that.
I'm just going to punch the light on.
So we go through these stories here with her. And I think this is the last page here that Leon did. This one here. And now we get into the relationship between Selena
and Batman.
Bruce. Let's see. And we go through them, they have a baby, Elena. Then the issues if she's going to be a superhero or not. Selena's against it. Bruce wants to train her. I think when she's 6 years old, Bruce gives her a sword. And Selena goes, why did you give her a sword? And of course, look at what she says. Can you see that?
I am Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I am Wonder Woman. And so we go through all these stories here. Them aging together. And of course, Bruce is not doing too well. It's very moving, especially how it ends, because this one, unlike the other one, we know how Bruce ended. This one tells the last day of Selena on this earth. I won't turn to that page, but it was really well executed. The way Tom King wrote this. I mean, King is really good at romance. Not romance in a sappy way, but in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, it helps that he's had talented artists work with him. And this is when Bruce is dead. And she's there at his grave. And the next couple of pages, we learn her fate, her destiny. And again, it's the last work that Leon did. And after I got this, it's the way chance works, coincidence. I'm at the shop that my friends have, and I'm looking through a box that they have, and I see this book. It's a Brave and the Bold book.
Uh-huh.
So I said,
Mm.
okay. I said,
That's
I'll,
lots.
they get it for me. And now the writer for this is someone I'm not familiar with. And apparently it's someone named Alan Brennert. Or just by,
I am
and the-
familiar with him. Sorry.
And Joe Staton and George Freeman do the artwork. Now, when I looked them up, he did some interviews with some science fiction writers in a magazine of science fiction that I have. And then I looked him up. He wrote a lot for television.
Right.
L.A. Law, which I used to watch at the time. And so, but this is a very moving story, and it's a companion to this piece. The writing is very crisp, and basically, it takes place in Earth 2, and that's Gordon there. And this sets up the story. Gordon tells Batman, one day, I'm going to put up the bat signal, and you're not going to come. That tells me that you're dead.
Mhm.
And a little part of me will also die that day too. And I'm basically almost quoting exactly how he wrote this. Now the story is about how basically Bruce, it's his memoir. Bruce is writing his memoir. He's in his 50s. That's what we see at the beginning. You see him here. Sorry. He's typing his memoirs. And what I really, there's a lot of stuff I like about this, but he goes to a wedding of an ex-girlfriend. And one, it's really cool to see Bruce smile. He rarely ever smiles now in comics. And this woman was an ex-girlfriend of his who's now getting married. And she broke up with him. And there's a theme in the story of Bruce and his ex-girlfriends. The reason they break, he picked good women who were from the upper class like him, but who felt some kind of duty to the rest of the world. And like she says, all you wanted to do was play polo. Find some meaning in your life. Do something. That's why I broke up with you. Now she has no idea that he's really Batman. Yeah. And then Bruce begins to remember of another girlfriend that broke up with him for the same reason. But none of them knew that he actually is doing very good. But again, he has to have this persona that he's just this playboy, philanderer, and could care less about the world. I see how they. So what sets the story going is that the Scarecrow crashes the wedding. And Dick Grayson's there, and so is Batwoman. And again, this takes place on Earth 2. And this one, the story really becomes even more interesting. At least to me, it did. What happens is that the Scarecrow uses a potion that, Bruce is always conscious of the fact that his parents are dead and how they were killed. But what this does, it brings the pain. The pain just gets even worse for him emotionally. And he begins to imagine that Dick and Batwoman have disappeared. And this sense of loss, the pain of losing his parents, the pain now of losing Dick, of losing Batwoman, it's just too much for him. And they're not dead, but he thinks that they are. And so he goes on a search for them in a way. And so he knows something is wrong with him. And so he seeks out someone. So he tries to contact Superman. He tries to contact Wonder Woman, but he can't get a hold of him. So he's going to go now to Selina. Now, in this story, what you have here, I'll put this down, is what I find fascinating is he goes to Selina. And Selina is in prison. And according to this storyline, she had amnesia for 10 years, which is the reason she became Catwoman. And when she got her memory back, she relinquished her old criminal past, and now she's doing time. And when she sees Batman, not Bruce Wayne, she has no idea that the two are the same. She goes, "Why are you here?" "Well, I need someone to help me, get my memory back, so to speak." And he's not going to go to the Riddler, not going to go to the Joker, because they're all insane. Selina just steals stuff. So Selina agrees and let her out of the prison. And as we're going through this, we discover that Selena, in fact, she did not lose her memory. She became Catwoman out of choice. Batman doesn't know this. And she tells him why. She says, I was married once to a very rich man who would beat me. And after this, I just divorced him when I was fed up. And this man was very materialistic. He had no emotional attachments. So he tried to destroy me emotionally and financially. So how could I hurt him? By taking the things that he prized the most, the material things. When I did that, she says, one, it felt great. But it felt great because I felt that I deserved this. I deserve these things, not just from him, but from the world. And that's why I became Cat. Nothing to do with amnesia. And then as we're going through this, basically the way the story concludes is that Batman is completely lost it. And so at one point, the Scarecrow puts a potion that makes Batman afraid of cats, makes Selena afraid of bats. But Selena is not overwhelmed by other issues as Bruce is, as Batman is. So she does something. She takes off her mask so that Bruce can see her. Because Bruce thinks that she's disappeared, that she's lost. She goes, no, I'm here. It's me, Selena. And then Bruce takes off his mask. And that's the first time he reveals himself to her. She goes, you're Bruce Wayne. Because all this time, Bruce realizes, as being Batman for 15 years, because this takes place 15 years that he's been Batman, that the reason he became Batman is to forget Bruce Wayne, forget the pain of the loss of his parents, not to think about it, not to dwell on it. But what the Scarecrow has done is brought it all back. And as he's thinking, why am I lonely? He has this persona, I'm Batman, and I have this persona of someone called Bruce Wayne. But now he's Bruce Wayne. And they kiss. And the last page of the story takes place, they get married.
Yeah.
They get married. And there's Bruce writing his memoirs. He's been dead a few months. And this is how the way he concludes. He says, she's been dead. She's been gone now for many months. But it still seems impossible to me. Her death was pointless. It was tragic. But I have long since given up trying to find meaning in death. The meaning is in life, not death. And Selena's life was as full of meaning as it was of love, spirit, and courage. And when my time comes to join her, I would only hope the same could be said for me. And the bad signal's there. And you think of Commissioner Gordon from the first page. Batman's not coming. And now a little part of Gordon is dead as well. I really enjoyed this. It was really very good.
No shit, man. I really enjoyed it. I haven't read the damn books.
Yeah, but the chance it was in there when I got this thing. And that's coincidence, you know?
If you can't find that actual comic book, actual DC has reprinted it in those dollar reprints they used to do.
Right,
And they while you were talking about, like, you were just like, my brain is like, I know this storyline. I actually read it, and it's, I think, in the same time while King's story of those two together were writing out, I think they put that out as well. So, which is really good. I think it's really nice that they reprinted something old like this, and it's really, honestly, highly recommended. Like, now you're telling me the story, it's like, oh, I read it. It's like really good between Selena and Bruce.
No.
I gotta say, Gore, I'm blown away by how good you are at making connections from book to book to book. It's incredible in both the ones you've covered here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
On our sloppy
It's a
little
treat.
chat.
Yeah. Where we talk about boners.
We do need those.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Keep the population. We need
Yeah, without them, there
that's
were
true.
nothing.
Very, very true. Thank you very much. I'm justifying my rudeness. That's incredible. Yeah, awesome, Gore. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's great. So I dipped into again. Ablaze seems to be something for me that I'm just hyper focused on these days. So I found Animal Castle #2. When you had your previews video there, Damien, it was
Yeah.
one that I kind of mentioned because I don't know anybody that's reading it. I hadn't heard anything
I
about
don't
it.
know what
I've
it
seen
is
the
all about.
images. Yeah, I didn't know much about
Quite
it
the
either.
title.
Issue 1 is long since gone. When I asked if they had any in stock that just weren't
Really?
on the shelf, they said no, those
Shit.
sold out immediately. I don't know if we can get them or if they're doing a second print. So the gist of what I'm getting into with it feels like it's a weird mix of there's reference to these animals kind of have their own castle or their own kingdom. You don't really get to see kind of too much of the landscape, but they do kind of coexist with humans at the same time, because there's a part of the story where they go and do a trade with humans. They've punished some of the animals who haven't listened to the leader, who's this bull, and kind of put them out basically to die. So then they're taking their corpses out to trade with the humans, so the humans can eat the food, and then they get something in return, feed and things for their community. So it's this real kind of Animal Farm-ish type of political landscape that's happening with these creatures, and some of them are starting to kind of speak out a little bit against it. Yeah, exactly. Animal Farm 2. Some of them are starting to speak out against it a little bit, and we have kind of one of our main characters who's this cat, this woman who's this female who has her children, and she has to go out and kind of work to provide for these kids. And this rabbit comes in to kind of inject himself into their life so he can kind of help out. Yeah, this scene made me laugh out loud. So when we cut back to kind of the bull, he's bedding a couple of cows in his room there, which I thought was kind of funny. It honestly stood out a little bit. It kind of detracted from the issue a little bit because it was ridiculously kind of comical. I don't know if that was the pure intention of it, but that's how it was. And here they are going out to trade with a human who you don't really get to see facial features, and you can see kind of what they're bringing him there in the back of the truck, the corpses and eggs and things. Beautiful art. It starts to dip into, I thought this part was clever. So there's a rat creature who's kind of found his way onto that cart back to the little community. And he's a traveling kind of theater. So he's putting on this show where he talks about standing up to this political power. And he portrays a king in here in not the best light. So he gets kind of confronted. He gets confronted by the dogs who are kind of like the guards. And I thought this was really clever. Instead of this kind of intimidation, this rat creature, anyway, character has this confidence in him because the dogs kind of confront him. That rat bastard is making fun of us, making fun of the king and stuff. Are you mocking us? And he starts talking to them like, no, do you feel that this is somehow portraying the king? Do you think that I'm making fun of our king who's providing, or our emperor who's providing for us and taking care of? Is that what you're saying in front of this crowd of people? So he completely turns the dynamic by having this conversation, and everybody starts then laughing and mocking the dogs as they kind of slink out of the room there. And you can see, and they start singing the kind of the song, the anthem about President Silvio, which is this bull creature. I'm glad that you know it here, Paulo, because I'm very curious about it. And again, the usual, all of that up there, and the small format. The one thing that I had a lot of trouble with is some of the text. It's pretty text heavy at parts, and it looks like in a couple of the word balloons they shrink it even more. I found it really, really difficult to read at times. I really had to focus and squint to kind of read all of the text on the page. Fantastic, a really fantastic book, though. Absolutely has my attention. I'm gonna kind of keep digging, see if I can find an issue number 1 somewhere. So the dogs kind of come out and try to chase down this rat creature, who again doesn't seem to be phased whatsoever until it's kind of he's about to get eaten up, but he's very confident in his abilities. Stabs one of the dogs in the eyes as he kind of takes off and hides. Yeah, and that's kind of where it goes at the back. The other downside, I guess I would say about the Blaze stuff, it's great to have samples of other books, but this is a couple of books now where I have kind of a sample of Laura. I guess there's only so much you can do. There's only so many titles that you have out, so you're going to get some duplication depending on when the books came out. But I kind of wish that back bit was filled with more story, or maybe background on the book, like the original European album, and then there's the cover for issue number 3 that comes out. Does it have a date? No, it doesn't. There's all your, as usual, your boatload of variants. Actually, that's not too many, 5, I guess. So really good, very recommended, gorgeous art, very intriguing story. Again, we'll see where it goes, right? Some of this stuff does tend to have a sameness if it feels like it's being too referential to other stuff, right? But I really dug it. I really liked it.
I just looked up while you were talking, and there is a second printing number 1 issue out and about. So
perfect.
I guess that's what you guys can look for. And I'm going to. I've never seen this as well, which is great to find out.
It didn't show up too much. I caught wind of it on some sort of stream, or I don't remember exactly where, and it just looked neat. I thought the art looked pretty intriguing, but in the shops, I just didn't see it in the shops. It just wasn't around. And then you reminded me, Damien, when I was watching that video,
just by
seeing that little ad, it was kind of like a jog to my memory of like, yes, I need to look for that book to give it a shot. So.
With that name, I couldn't tell what kind of book it would be at all.
Mm-hmm. Is it a translation? Is it already been? It is, right?
Yeah, because Paolo said it.
Okay.
Paolo's saying that it's a European album format is being done before, and
that's why I didn't buy it. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Because I was fresh. I saw the borders, right, and I saw how small the print is, and I said,
"It's so small.
Not going to work. It's not."
No, it's so small. I really struggled. That was, and again, like that's my biggest criticism. Like it was so small on some of the pages that it was so difficult to kind of pinpoint what they were saying.
I guess Mike at Comic Swag has read Animal Castle number 1.
Okay.
So maybe I heard about it through him. He does pretty regular comic book reviews.
Yeah.
I did notice, for those who are in the US and have Hoopla and like digital, that issue number 1 is available on Hoopla. I just looked.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
But it's good to hear there's a second print, so hopefully people can get it physically. But yeah, does a Blaze, when they publish the trade, do they do it in the album size? That's what I want to know. I haven't seen yet.
So the hardcovers that I have of Old Geezers and A Man's Skin, they're comic size, so they're just hardcovers and they're still comic size.
And do they look shrunken down?
Yes,
it does. Yeah. I mean, I'm reading them because I'm devouring it.
You don't have any other choice, I guess.
You don't have any other choice, and I really want to read it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's an unfortunate side effect, but hopefully, if they my hope is maybe if they gain more momentum, they kind of see that there is a potential for these books, and maybe their sales increase, and maybe they start investing in doing that kind of thing.
I ordered Old Geezers number 2 because of you. The volume 2 was available on In-Stock Trade, so I just grabbed it.
Oh, nice.
But it hasn't arrived yet.
Oh.
It's funny stuff, man. Funny stuff.
I'm already putting that on the list as well, because I read number 1 issue and I absolutely loved it, and I never went forward with that stuff. So when I see you have it, like I said previously, you showed it, so it looks even more tasty in the issue, like volume 2 of yours. So yeah,
a Blaze seems to be in that niche that's really working for me right now, because everything that I've tried out from them so far, I'm really digging. Like I love it. I mean, this is the other one that I read this week, Laura number 3 from a Blaze, and I loved it as well. I mean, we'll maybe talk about it next round, but yeah, there you go. Loved it. I loved this issue so much. I'm really digging this series quite a bit. So I thought that was a fantastic issue. Yeah, he's got it. There you go. He's ready to go.
He's getting ready.
Yeah. Rasa, what do you got for us next?
Well, talking animals, I thought I have to go into my Usagi Yojimbo fix, and Damien was talking in the last video about this one, and I didn't manage to read it that time, so I read this one, and this is really good, and it's definitely one-off issue. I mean, you can completely just pick it up if you just want to sample Usagi Yojimbo, because it's just a classically way of dealing with storylines, how our Stan Sakai is doing that, and it's beautifully told. It's called Frost and Fire. It's a love story in a way, and of course we get Usagi Yojimbo involved, and I really absolutely love this panel here, because this is just like that beautiful way of this, like showing samurai, and especially with that, I don't know what you call that hat, like a straw hat or something like that, but there's a certain name I know for sure there is. Anyway, so it's just really like every single time I read it, and it's like, why didn't I never got into this even now? Like even now I'm reading most of the stuff like it comes out. I just really love it. It's a tale of him getting involved in the feud between two families, and one like a male samurai who's been dead, and Usagi Yojimbo is basically trying to get his swords back to his wife. And apparently there's a story behind that, and that this lady here, she was in love with our samurai, and he's the one who was like having secretly love, and because she is not of noble background, they couldn't be together, so they went in hides. But there's a sinister end to this, and the way our creator Stan Sakai is doing that is just kind of like in a way teaching you a lesson, which I kind of, like if you want to gain like a wealth from your own family, can go really badly to you and to people before. Like if you are sinister to somebody else, it kind of turn back to you, and I really like that. So I think it's oh, thank you, Raga Mukiwara. So yeah, as I say, really recommend it if you just want to check out Usagi Yojimbo, just for the sake of just seeing what we always talk about it and highlighting it all the time. This is really beautifully done. Scenes, Usagi Yojimbo always kind of does it the right thing at the end of the day. But yeah, beautiful thing. Always a smile on my face when I finish reading it, and it's always very good. And the storytelling just keeps on getting better. It seems to be just the right moment, the right time, the right panels, the right flip page. It seems to be. It's always never have a miss, and I'm surprised. The attention to detail. Like for him to tell you just a simple little story. It seems to be, but all that little details, it comes to a fruition and stuff like that, and it's just really well done. And Damien, you never liked this because it's a mouse guard artist who's doing the front covers, and the next one he's doing, which there's somewhere an ad which I can't find.
I've grown to like the mouse guard artist's work better. It's still weird to go from that cover to the interior art, but
this one celebrates the New Year's as well, because you can see the tiger up above, and
nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't like the artist. I'm just saying that I am getting to like more and more because the way Usagi is looking here and stuff like that. But yeah,
he's a very good artist, and it is slowly dawning on me that he is. The title of the series was Lone Goat and Kid.
Yeah, Lone Goat and Kid
was confusing, I know, to at least Bob, who was expecting something referencing, Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
And this is just a very, as you said, an extremely good standalone story.
Yeah.
Nothing relating to Lone Wolf and Cub. But
I thought the same thing, like Bob, when I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they just have a bunch of stories, and they want to make them into 6-issue arcs so they can sell them that way.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be something somewhere amongst those stories that relates somehow.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone editorially just thought that was a clever thing to do.
but yeah, definitely one of the like again. I mean, as I say, continuously stories like what they were turning out of the like ongoing series of Isagi Shinbo, or those like the like 6-issue series jumps and stuff like that. But I just, as I say, really nice. The way his attention to detail is so good to see in comic book, and it does really work if you just, like get that printing right, in the comic
Right.
books. I think it's such an essential part of you having our imagination even bursting even more what you wanted to portray in the storyline, which is really good. As I
Right.
really beautiful, absolutely fantastic.
Well, in this small, quiet story about animals, or seemingly animals,
Yeah.
it's full of humanity and telling us things about human nature.
Yeah, exactly. And how sinister we can be just to gain in our own self-worth and stuff like that. So really good.
I'm so happy that you jumped even deeper into Usagi, that we can both be there.
Yeah, it's really good. As I say, I'm astounded how I got into so late into Usagi. I always see it. I always look people going up absolutely apeshit for it. They have those collected hardcovers, and now I completely understand why. And as a Turtles fan, this would be no brainer for me, but my brain probably went on holidays in that time, so thankfully we're back in business and doing reading.
I was at Bueller's house until just about midnight last night.
Yeah.
But I forgot to bring my beer back home with me because I don't think he drinks beer. But anyway, we had a good time.
That's good.
But I haven't read many comics because I was on so many live chats. I did a Jeopardy. I did that thing with Justin. I did a hangout with George. I can't believe how much I did in 1 week. And then I spent last night sort of not really helping, but maybe getting in the way of Bob's auction.
Oh, yeah.
So,
what was this Jeopardy that you were on? What was that?
I think, was that Monday night? It's really good. Well, I thought it was really fun. There's a guy named Brian, Comic Crazy, and he set up a whole comic book Jeopardy and had 3 of us play, me and Bob and another fellow, Mike, I think his name was. I can't remember. Not someone who's part of the YouTube thing. So it was just like the game of Jeopardy with different dollar amounts for different questions.
Really? That's pretty great.
And I feel like Bob and I should have been neck and neck, but he got one thing wrong that put him into the negative dollar zone. So, and then he did not win his bet in Final Jeopardy either. So I think I might have beat him like $95 to 0 or something like that.
Wow.
But then Brian sent us all packages of comics as prizes. I haven't opened.
Oh, that's very nice.
Wow.
It's not nearby, but thought I would do it on a video. So not on this video though, since I don't have it nearby. So I have been working away at The Walking Man, which I'm mostly through it actually. Which is because of Terrence that I bought it, but I also realized I think for the love of comics was talking about it. This was not what I expected. I must not have been paying close attention, even though I took because the art was not at all what I expected it to look like. It's very tight art, right? It's almost like it was like he studied architecture. Like this artist, it just reminds me of the art done by architects. There's a lot of buildings, but even when he draws the landscape, it reminds me of the kind of thing an architect would draw. And the character just always has a little smile on his face. And he reminds me a bit of Clark Kent for some reason. I kept thinking, this is shallow. I kept thinking, this is Clark Kent in his off hours. Why don't you switch to my overhead thing? That's easier.
Sure, yeah. Give me 1 sec here.
And then I also thought that maybe there's, in some weird way, like it's kind of that, what do the Europeans call it? Ligne claire style, where it's all just thin lines. Although he does use gray wash or grayscale of some kind.
It also feels like the backgrounds in the trees, especially the nature stuff, it almost has kind of like a traced quality to it. You know what I mean? Which I personally enjoyed, but
I hadn't thought of that, but now that you say that, it's
Mhm.
almost like he perhaps took a photograph and simplified it way down.
Right.
So it is beautiful art, but it took me a long time to adjust to it. I imagined something rougher, and something more. I've got some tomato sauce in my hand. I was sneaking a couple slices of pizza while other people were talking. Because it is my lunchtime here.
Yeah.
I distracted myself, but yeah, like look at a shot like this. It's just so clean and architectural. And this guy is just so kind of bland. So I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm just talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like I need
Just
to
wasn't
read it.
what you expected.
Right. I feel like I need to read it a second time. I think I got caught up in just looking at the drawings from like their technical skill, and so it wasn't as meditative an experience reading as I thought it would be. I mean, it was relaxing, but and then I thought, maybe I'd prefer it in color, but actually I don't love the color choices
Watercolor.
in here. They're
Yeah,
not
it looks
bad or
nice in
anything,
black and white.
but I like the
Oh,
black
except
and
for
white
that.
better. You like that page, yeah.
It's
Oh yeah, I
watercolor.
like the textures like on the drive.
Yeah, those are nice.
Oh, look at that cherry blossoms. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So I do love this idea of just little snippets of daily life. I mean, I used to love American Splendor, and those were little sort of snippets of the grumpy working class guy's life. But this is more sort of placid. And I started thinking about moments in my life that I could just make into a little, if I had the skill to draw all the detail of the world around me into just a little moment of life. And the other thing is, I think because a lot of it was wordless, I kept falling back on my Western way of reading, and I kept switching. I would jump ahead and then I would go back. Oh, wait, I have to read here. And then do I read here or here? Or I probably read there and then there. So
it is quite a thing to do.
It is it's masterfully drawn. Oh, I was saying that there was a bit of that Linnea Claire thing. I wondered that they end up naming their dog Snowy. So I wondered if that was a tip of a hat to Tintin or not. He doesn't look like the dog Snowy. He looks like a Labrador. And I love the sort of chapter breaks, rain.
Yeah.
It just lets you know that this is a little segment by itself. Yeah, there he is. He's smiling in the rain. I think at one point in another sequence, his book gets all wet and he's still smiling.
Yeah, dude's baked through the whole thing.
That might be it. His wife too. Okay, and my favorite one, just because he had this little bit of a devil in him, so to speak, for such a bland guy, is he sneaks into a swimming pool after hours and swims naked in the pool.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's
there's your male genitals for the day.
There you go. It's the Damien who's
they're not
in
the active mode, but
yeah.
TMI.
He looks like he's quite a good swimmer. He's even doing the butterfly there. So I don't know. I thought that was really cool.
Wow, that's a good scene.
I think he's got some shrinkage there too.
That's nice. Yeah.
No detail is ignored. But that was. I think this chapter is what sold me on it the most somehow.
Yeah.
A little sort of sign of personality from him on the rebellion side.
Yeah.
And then there's some other ones. I don't know if you talked about it. Let me see if I can. I probably won't be able to find them. But there's some chapters. Oh, here it is. He's walking along. And there's this old elder gentleman, and they walk side by side for a second. Then the elder gentleman gets ahead of him. And then he just keeps.
Yeah.
He's following the elder gentleman. Then he gets ahead of him. He's behind him again. And it just continues.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
And then at the end, they just walk side by side for a little while.
Yeah.
And that had me really curious. Like, I wonder if that had more meaning in Japanese culture than it. Anyway, it was I didn't know what to really make of that, but it was interesting.
it might be a lot of with respect and older people as well while you're walking past by.
I don't know, because I think there's another, the Long Trail it's called. So
But all that,
he's got such a bland expression on his face.
But
No, you're
he's
right.
just
Look
so
at Clark Kent.
peaceful.
yeah.
He's so peaceful through the whole thing. Like
Right.
it's really like seeing it again. It makes me want to read it again. It's just unlike anything I've ever read before. All of these details, like every little detail, is just so incredible. And he's purely throughout the whole book. He's purely in the moment. Like you don't get distracted by his character. You just become this person walking through the landscape and stuff. Right. It's really an impressive piece of work to me.
It's
I really love it.
almost as if he's brand new to the world. Like he's just always looking. Everything is so interesting and makes him smile.
Absolutely. That shot of him sitting in the tree in that one story is the one that's burnt. I don't know if you've passed it or where it was exactly.
Is that
but
the one where he helps the kids climb?
Yeah, and then takes his shoes off and climbs the tree and just sits there and looks out at the landscape.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous stuff, man.
It's just enjoying life, people.
Yeah, that
It's
one right
just
there.
life
Exactly right.
enjoyment. You know, every moment for him is the minute not spent. It seems to be, from what I'm seeing in the pictures. You know, he wants to take in everything. There's a cartoon, Disney cartoon called Soul, and there's this really great moment of the petal going down from the tree, and the guy just like breathe in the air, just like, be in the moment. We forget, we run, like always running. We just like enjoy it. Like it's just one life you have. Just take it all in. So it seems to be this guy is just proper going full on,
Oh, it's
reminds me of Jeff Darrow a little bit there.
A little
Absolutely.
bit, yeah.
Absolutely.
But there's none of the what's the right term? None of the, not rough edges, none of the weirdness at all.
No, much more peaceful.
very clean cut, yeah.
But it also makes me think of like an adult coloring book.
Yeah.
The lines are just so perfect, and so I feel like it's something I would read multiple times and just have a different interpretation each time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I haven't quite finished it, but I've gotten pretty far in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've read other books by him, Terrence?
Yeah, two more. One of them that I wasn't as crazy about. And it was like was it Snow Walker? I think it was called something like that I wasn't as crazy. But I mean, again, it feels like now that I've read 3 of his books, I should go back and revisit it and give it another chance. Because I think that's that one that I didn't really like. It was right after reading this one, that was the next one.
Right.
So I think I had these expectations. Yeah. So I've got to revisit. And then the third one, I'm completely blanking on the title of it. And I loved it. It was about a guy who kind of revisits his town that he grew up in and is transported back to being 13, 14, 15 years old and is in his body, but his mind is still that of the old man. And it's just an amazing story. And it has a lot of these moments too.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Did that one have more of a plot then?
Lots more of a plot. Yeah. But it still had these really nice moments. He would go out at lunchtime and sit on a bench in nature instead of hanging out with the other kids. So there was a couple of these moments like in Walking Man where he would just be staring up at the clouds, looking at the trees and just basking in kind of his surroundings in his kind of youthful body again. Yeah, it was great.
So another little section that I loved and related to was where his glasses break. They're all cracked.
Yeah.
And he continues his walk, and we get different views of him looking at things without his glasses on. And at first I thought he was like seeing triple or something there.
Right.
And I'm actually not sure if this is supposed to be what the world looks like without his glasses on, a little less detailed. And then I like where, they're not there. We'll see, like, that's what he sees without the glasses. Then he puts on the glasses and then he sees that. This sort of fractured version of things. But I'd love to see different artists tackle this kind of thing. Because it's so, I don't know. The style, I think, is not my ideal style, for me personally. And I just love to see what
I like it.
What other artists with other styles and another way of looking at the world would tackle just small moments in life.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't look like was even a smudge of a pencil. So
Right.
clean.
Right.
OCD
Yeah.
people loves this comic book, I bet.
Who does?
OCD people, like we
OCD
have,
people,
yeah.
right.
It's
Yeah, it's
perfect.
almost like the drawings just appeared from God or something. Like there's no human hand.
Yeah. Like, look at his hand on the ground there. That's
Mhm.
such a
There, yeah.
good drawing,
The
man.
petals, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Beautiful.
that hand image then repeats. This is an interesting one because he meets this woman who seems not at all troubled by just hanging out with a stranger under a tree.
Mhm.
She lies down because it was a place she used to like to lie down as when she was younger. And then he comes back and he puts his hand in the grass or the leaves, petals maybe, petals, I think.
Yeah, cherry
Again.
blossoms, yeah.
And this movie that he left there that they show at the beginning looks a bit erotic. Oops.
Mhm.
And it looks like it's a French movie. La Petite Voleuse. And it shows a woman's legs and arms and she's putting on high heels. I don't know if that's a real movie at all. It's not one I've heard of. I don't know if you guys can see it. Anyway, so he's picked up what looks like a fairly erotic French movie at this video store. And then he meets he lies under the tree with this woman and leaves his movie behind and then tells his wife, "Oh, I left the movie behind. I have to go get it."
I have to get this.
And then he puts his hands in the petals one last time.
Mhm.
So it's almost like he had an erotic encounter with this woman, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
in
No,
his
there's a
filthy
hint
mind.
at that later on.
Sorry?
There's a hint at that later on too, if I remember correctly. A story
There's
later on
another,
that kind of
there's
takes
a
a bit of a
woman he
turn.
meets that he talks about birds with. Is that the one? Or maybe I haven't
Oh,
gotten
that could be. Yeah.
There you go.
I don't think it's the same woman. He's older now.
Mhm.
And actually the style has changed. It's a little less detailed. I am curious. Like, I wonder if these were originally all published together or appeared, one chapter at a time in the magazine with other things.
Uh-huh.
And I think
I'm not too sure.
it's a bigger book than your average manga. At least manga as published in the United States.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fascinating. I'm really glad that you guys talked about it enough that it finally sunk into my head that I should get my own copy.
Well, Terrence was raving about it when he read it,
Right.
so
Yeah.
now he's raving again. So there you go.
Yeah,
Full
I mean,
circle.
again, it's this thing of revisiting the stuff. This is what you've been doing today, making me want to
Right.
revisit a bunch of stuff. Daredevil, revisit this epic,
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All that gray and one gray colors I think you use in the book in that one. I think is those gray tones very famous for Japanese manga colors. Even the kayfabe was like one of the guys went into Japan to visit, and there's a shop just concentrated for gray tones. So every single scene you would think like snow, everything, rain, clouds, everything you can put it in, you cut it out. And that's how you don't have to use it that much of the like any pencils or anything. So.
Thanks, Paulo, about the movie. I might look into it to understand the scene more.
You must have been very young then. I think Charlotte, that's Serge's daughter, isn't it?
It is correct, yeah.
Then she must have been really young at that time. I wonder, like a teenager or something. Maybe, yeah. Huh. Fascinating book.
I wonder if Celia has seen the movie.
She said it
Celia
is a movie.
She said it is a movie, but I don't know if she's seen it.
Oh yeah.
And hello,
Knowing
Celia.
Smile.
Once again.
Awesome, Damien. Mr. Vidal, what do you got for us?
Oh, well, it's
As if I didn't know.
Women, so you mentioned the erotic scene. Well, let's get to this. You guys familiar with this book so far?
I'm not.
No, I'm not. No.
No.
The Last Days of Stefan Zweig.
Nope.
It's by Guillaume Sorel and Laurent Sexic. Before I get into it, though, I mentioned Thomas Mann earlier. I'd read, like I mentioned earlier, Death in Venice in the 90s, and then by the late 90s. And one of those chance encounters in a way, where I met this woman, and she was from Eastern Germany, and she was doing her studies at the University of Texas. And initially, it was a very contentious meeting, but quickly we got along quite well. And part of the reason was books, and I don't know how we got discussing books, and I mentioned if she had read Thomas Mann, and she had not. But she mentioned she had read Stefan Zweig, and she mentioned a short story called The Royal Game, I think. And that got me interested in the writer. And then I went shortly thereafter and bought this book here, The World of Yesterday, which is the memoir he wrote before he died. Briefly, Stefan Zweig was born in Vienna. And at one point in the early 20th century, he was the most translated author in the world. And he was very popular in the US, very popular in Latin America. And he wrote essays, short stories, and short biographies of people like Erasmus or Mary Stuart or Balzac. But he came from an upper class family, but he was Jewish. And he was very much of a cosmopolitan kind of person, and he knew many, many languages. And he was at home wherever he was. And he was that generation that believed that culture, art, could civilize people and basically save the world, so to speak. Very idealistic. And he knew absolutely everybody. I mean, he knew Schubert, he knew Freud, he knew Salvador Dali. He knew, you name it, he knew them. And he was good friends with many of them. This one's called The Last Days of Stefan Zweig. And it basically, I'll get this in a moment. This is his wife, Charlotte, the second wife. And what the story is of them, the pages are just beautiful. And here. Them sailing from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 1941. The U.S. has not entered the war yet.
Oh.
They're sailing to Brazil, to Petropolis, which was founded by Germans. It's one of the few places that they can find refuge in. Charlotte was the second wife. And when they were going to get their marriage license in 1939, they were living in London. It's announced that Germany has just invaded Poland. So the war is on. And Poland had an alliance with England, so now England's in it. And as they're getting the driver's license, they notice that they're German. Well, they're Austrian. But now, immediately, they are called foreign aliens. And it's doubtful if they're going to give them the marriage license. The reason Zweig and Charlotte are in England is because they're exiles at this point, because he's Jewish. But now, he's in exile because he's Austrian. So their problems just got even worse. So basically, they're in perpetual exile. Zweig's first wife was living in New York with two children. Regarding Zweig, he met his first wife when she was married to someone else, and she had two children. They had an affair, and she divorced her husband. And they never had kids together. And then one of the ironies is his wife introduced Charlotte to him to be his secretary. And then he began an affair with Charlotte. But he always had a good relationship with his ex-wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife first. And so now they're living in Brazil. And what this is basically a chronicle of a story of their last days together. Because what this is leading up to is in 1941, the U.S. enters the war. But at first, everything looks hopeful that the war is going to end sooner. But then Singapore is taken over by the Japanese. And Zweig is really disillusioned. He just thinks that basically Japan and Germany are going to conquer the world. It's only a matter of time before the Latin America is conquered. And eventually, just the U.S. is going to be left, or the continent of North America is going to be left. But even if the Allies eventually triumphed in Zweig's mindset, I showed you a picture earlier of book burning. Again, he was one of the most popular, respected writers from Austria. But the problem for the Nazis is that he was a Jew. So at one point, they raided his library and they burned his books from his home library in Salzburg. What you see there. And the point basically of this is for Zweig, is that even if the Allies won the war, he thought we can't go back again. And he felt that Europe had committed cultural suicide and things could not go back to normal. Again, he was very idealistic, and his idealism now is going to be his Achilles heel because he's very disappointed. Before he left London to New York, he met with Sigmund Freud. Him and Freud had been friends for many years, and Freud was living in London, which is where he died and was buried. And Freud had written a book, I think, called Civilization and Its Discontents. And Freud's point was culture, progress, technology does not civilize people. The baser instincts will always emerge, and they will triumph much of the time. Now, Zweig completely rejected that. However, he realized that Freud was right in his mind. So it's called The Final Day, The Last Days of Stefan Zweig is that what's going to happen is when Singapore falls, it looks like Japan and Germany are doing quite well in the war. And already he's gotten refuge here in Brazil, but now the people are turning against him. He just has lost complete hope. Now his wife, Charlotte, was like 33. He was in his 60s. Her family had escaped to England. But he manages to convince her that there's only one way out. Suicide. And that's what this leads up to, those final pages. And he wrote letters out right before to his ex-wife, to people that he knew. And one thing about Zweig, that one of the last books he was working on was on Montaigne. Montaigne was a French essayist, where we get the word essay from. Also a humanist. And there was a pattern to his writing. People he admired were always strong humanists. People that believed in humanity, that we could do well in the end. But in the end, he just, the darkness just blanketed over him. And there's some final pages here when they have their last dance together, so to speak. And the maid's the one who finds them. They were in bed together. They were both in bed together when the maid found them the next day. And his wife was curled up right next to him. And when I read this just earlier this year, when I've been thinking about it, it made me go back to this book again, which is the last book that he wrote right before he died, his memoirs. And he added an extra page at the end, his final farewell letter. It's in here. That's Zweig there. Just briefly, he says, before parting from life of my free will and in my right mind, I am impelled to fulfill last obligation to give thanks to this wonderful land of Brazil. And he goes on, to thank them. But after 160th year, unusual powers are needed in order to make another wholly new beginning. Those that I possess have been exhausted by long years of homeless wandering. He had been in exile for almost 10 years. So I think it better to conclude in good time and in erect bearing a life in which intellectual labor meant the purest joy and personal freedom, the highest good on earth. I salute all my friends. May it be granted them yet to see the dawn after the long night. I, all too impatient, go on before. Yeah, the author and the artist of this book, it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's very moving. And it made me think of it again because of the Batman Catwoman story I just read.
Mm-hmm.
And two people, at least in this story, they actually live out some kind of life. But here, I mean, Charlotte didn't have to die with him, but they both decided they took some barbiturates. I think that's how they did it. But beautiful book, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing.
Yes, it did. Yeah, Wes Anderson did. He loosely, they have to from this. Basically, the world that he discussed here of Vienna and the world of Europe, the culture of the world of Europe. Yeah, it's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Looks fantastic, Gore. That's amazing. Yeah. What the hell do you say? Looks great.
No, blame Batman and Catwoman. They get me thinking about these things.
Yeah, exactly.
I do. Stories, what would we do without them? They really are. But he's a wonderful writer. They made a good film. One of his best stories that's known was made in the 30s or 40s. Letter to an Unknown Woman.
Mm.
I think Max Ophuls, did the film. And the story is about a man on his birthday. He always gets flowers, but he doesn't know who they're from. And he's a playboy. He's a writer. He has all these things. But finally, he gets a letter one day. And it's from the woman who's been sending him flowers for many, many years. And we discover who this woman was. And it's a little too late by the time. Well, you'll see. Or is it? But yes. It's a really wonderful film. Wonderful story by Zweig. Letter to an Unknown Woman. Highly recommend it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gotten such letters before, so it's probably
Yeah.
Probably good. Probably good.
So as we're kind of sorry, Damien. Yeah.
Damien, you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm trying to figure out why I never heard of Zweig in any of my college English courses.
I didn't either. Again, back to my point was, when I talked to this girl from Germany, I said, have you read Thomas Mann? She goes, no. Have you read Robert Musil? She said, no. Now, we did connect on Rilke, because Rilke had been the one who inspired Wings of Desire, a film she had not seen by then. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but Zweig is one I had not heard of. And I don't know how the hell that happened. But all the other writers, right, were all there, but Zweig was not there.
And Wikipedia says he was the most widely translated writers in the world in the 20s and 30s.
Jesus.
So it's like, how did he not get ever even mentioned? Because I was quite interested in literature. But anyway, I'm going to have to look into him more. Not just the comic, but I'm now very intrigued by him as a writer. We got a new career for you, Gore. You can do audiobooks.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe you already do.
Maybe I'll read 50 Shades of Grey.
And then the dramatization of Saga.
Well, it's on my mind because yesterday at the comic shop, everyone was obsessed with the first appearance of some Spider Queen because it's gonna be played by Dakota Johnson. Not because of that, but I remember I'm thinking people are paying how much for this thing? So I'm thinking, now I'll go see Dakota Johnson, but that's why I thought about that.
Yeah.
It was bestseller at the time, but I think you would make it bestseller once again if you just do audiobook. It's like, what is this book? What? Movie? What?
Actually, I joke with Damien that back to Saga, that I was thinking the good news about Saga coming back, it brings a lot of women into the comic shop.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good for me.
Definitely did.
And but I joke that Damien, you remember the survey that Brian K. Vaughan has?
Yes.
I think they're actually pickup lines that he uses on women. And so next time at the comic shop, I'll go, hey, so have you met with a recent immigrant? Come on, don't be coy. You tell me and I'll tell you mine. Or the other one. So, what kind of kids are you? Tell me. Come on. You know. So I'm not making those up. Those are the questions he was asking.
Those were the
Yeah.
questions on that annoying or asinine
Right?
survey. Yeah.
But I
Yeah, that
think
was
they're all
early
people.
on, wasn't it? Yeah.
Now, as a man, I respect that. All is fair in love and war.
Yeah.
And that part, Brian Cavon were on the same team. But at the same time, but you want to ingratiate yourself with your reader, especially with women. I'm all for that. But
Mhm.
when that begins to infect your storytelling, that's when I say no. That's when this guy comes out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Police comes out. That's right.
Gore, I'm not sure if I've seen it or have you read By Last Man by Brian Cavon?
Yes, I read the first volume, and I did like it.
Uh-huh.
I
Did
did
you
like
finish-
it, but not. But that was also when I got back into comics with, and there were so many good comics, Southern Bastards,
Yeah.
the Remender book. There were
Yeah.
so many that it
Yeah.
engaged me, but not enough to
So
continue.
many.
But the writing didn't bother me there at all, not at all. Not even in the Paper Girls thing, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It didn't engage me. So it didn't bother me. It's just a Saga thing. It's something about Saga when he writes that. I don't know what the hell's wrong with it. So yeah.
But then it's what is wrong with our whole society that Saga's the most popular comic then?
I do not.
Yeah.
That's okay. But it brings estrogen into the shops. That's good.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a good thing for sure.
Estrogen's important.
My shop owner was very happy.
I'm sure a lot of shop owners were extremely happy when that
they were
came out.
bouncing
Yeah.
off the walls probably. It's like,
I think so.
thankfully my money's coming back. Where were they?
God.
I'm
I
finally
meant
gonna
to
earn some
look-
savings.
No, that's a good thing. It really is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they have to worry about when Saga ends again.
Yeah.
Like 10 years, probably. Oh, yeah.
So AFPC knows about Zweig.
Hope. Clicking buttons here. There we go. So we're creeping up to the
the creepy hour.
2:45 mark, but I was
Mhm.
thinking we could end on again, it's difficult to follow anything up from Vidal, but I was thinking that we could end since we've been kind of waiting
you want
for Laura. We can end on that one actually, Gore. We'll do that. So maybe we'll talk this and then Laura, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
So I think we've all caught up now, right? Damien, you're caught up. Rasa, you're caught up.
Yeah. Number 8, yeah.
So thoughts now hit me with your thoughts. There was stuff that you guys wanted to hit me with before I read it. Go for it. Do you remember any of this stuff?
Well, you need to flip pages because that's just
Okay, I'll flip
basically
pages. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
I'll
think-
make myself big and flip pages.
Oh wait, I have it.
copies nearby.
I have.
Hold on.
Oh, did you? Because your covers are different. Do you have number 9 issue, the last one? Yes.
I do. Yeah, 8 and 9.
Yeah, because your
So
covers
this
are always
is-
different. Yeah.
This is 8. Yeah, I mean it's that shop, man. When the variants are cover price, I go for which cover I like the best, and I just grab it.
Which is great. Yeah.
So this is issue number 8.
Yeah.
So again, kind of jumping back out of issue number 7. So issue number 6 was to me, reading the second arc, it really jumped out at me. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Issue number 7 kind of jumped time that made me a little confused. And I found that happened with issue number 8 and number 9. And I think one of the things for me was he was trying this kind of storytelling, especially at the end of number 9. I feel like he was trying this storytelling technique, but there wasn't enough kind of variation in, I don't know, the art or the setting or something to kind of show you that you were either going backwards or forwards.
We have a
in
couple
time.
of different groups out on the plains,
Exactly.
but I'm not.
And it seems like those
clear
different groups are
who-
appearing that they're in the same time period, but then within those different groups, there's kind of jumps to different parts of the story and different parts of their journey that become a little confusing to kind of track what am I supposed to be getting out of this? Where is this going? By issue number 9, I like the premise. I like the idea of kind of raising these spirits that are going to cleanse the land basically of the white man and kind of bring their land back to them. I thought it was fantastic. But man, it's so convoluted to get there. It was really there was moments where I was legitimately frustrated reading these. As much as I read them and kind of enjoyed them at a base level, there was parts where it just felt like it was such sloppy storytelling.
I was very frustrated by issue 9.
Yeah. And I totally hear that. I hear that.
But yeah, it's like, I think our hero, Mr. Two Moons, is against the raising of these spirits, and there's someone else who's raising the spirits, and I'm not even sure if the person raising the spirits has showed up in the comic or not.
It is. I think it is. It is right at issue 9. You can see them actually raising the dead while they were like celebrating it. And that's the thing with the storyline, was that I think basically the whole story is about that little knife everybody's after. And we have a split of 2 teams where basically one of them is trying to save themselves from basically being captured, and also American Indians is basically revolting against the white men, and that's why you have this ghost war, basically a storyline telling. But what I like you guys saying is that I think it's really bad that the way it jumped into storylines from past to future, it got confusing us, because I don't think or the artist or both the writer hasn't have basically meant like, remember I was talking about the Deadly Class, how they were like telling your story with coloring. This one doesn't do that at all. So for us, you have to basically kind of rely on speech bubbles, and most of them that's convey right information, but you're like, so where I am at the moment. And that was frustrating part for me as well, because there's lots of information in here and a lot of involvement from both African American. But there's this guy in blue, the last page of the issue 8, the guy in the blue. I think this is the guy who's basically invoking those spirits, as far as I got it out of it. But I don't know what you guys has felt. This guy, there you go. This guy.
I guess so, yeah.
And I was at the moment, when I seen this picture, I thought this is our main character, Two Moons, but it's not.
Right. So that's part of the problem. It's hard to tell, especially because we're jumping time, so people's hair is changing, and stuff. Who is who? I'm not sure who that guy who with the mohawk who put on the soldier's outfit.
Yeah, that's the kid who was following Two Moons everywhere. He's
like Two Moons' apprentice or something.
Yes, exactly. He's the one who's basically has the potential to be as a Two Moons, like seeing, those creatures, I guess. That's the thing, the power of them. So he's following, shadowing him everywhere. So he was just dressing up as a soldier because they basically, in order to save them, he basically changed the clothing.
And once you lose track of when you're not quite sure which character you're watching talk, then the details start slipping and sliding away from you.
Is it a writing problem? Because I'm looking at the artwork. I haven't read the book, but the artwork, I like the artwork. So is it the writing that's the issue?
It's 100% the writing. But it's also, I think, with the art too a bit, because I think the thing is with some of the jumps in time, you're not jumping back to like this issue starts out with our main kind of doctor, this Irish woman, as a child. So it's very clear that we're at a different time period. But I think some of the other jumps in time, they're not far enough back that you get that, or in the future as it kind of jumps into this one. It's just an odd way. It just feels like
a bit jumbled.
He's trying to give you a little bit of like, here's a taste of something, but we're not kind of tying it in that well. So I think it is a writing thing. And then it's just a pacing of the book itself too, that, I mean, because there's some really good ideas in here, like Two Moons not agreeing with the spirits because his idea is that we have to find a way to coexist with the white man.
Right.
They're too good at war. We're never going to survive. They're going to wipe us off this continent if we don't figure out a way to kind of work with them. Right. Like there's some interesting ideas going on, but they're just not realized that well.
Those spirits are drawn very well, but
so well.
But it's not clear what they're doing or even what their relationship with reality is. Like, are they actually there or are they more like ghosts?
Feels like they're more like ghosts, but it's kind of, they're presenting them. This is the part that really kind of frustrated me when I got to this one. It's this, I don't quite understand why we're going to jump such a short distance in time. Like, hey, look at that over there. Here's what we're coming to. And then the next page is kind of the aftermath. And I don't quite understand that type of storytelling when it comes. Like, I understand not everything you necessarily want to fall back on. Like, here's the big reveal of the creature or something, and then tune in next issue. So I feel like he's trying to do some things that I just don't think it's paying off. Here's the aftermath, and then wait to the next issue to get that in between. It becomes just more frustrating as a read, as opposed to flows nicely.
Strange to see a book that's working so well suddenly just seemingly fall apart right in front of your eyes. Like, suddenly it's hard to derive meaning out of it. So
I feel that comes from a place of they had this idea for those first chunk of issues and then didn't get it. They didn't expect it to be a hit and then carry on. That it really feels like one of those books where I'm just going to throw a bunch of shit together and we're just going to get this out, which I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying that that's the case for sure, but that's how it feels as a reading experience. Because I want to like this book a lot
or
more.
is he's got too much story that he's trying to pack into 5 issues?
No, I think that's what it is. I think it's way too many storylines combining together. We have the Irish Lady, the Doctor storyline, we have Two Moon storyline, and we have that little knife who everybody's after. Apparently the soldiers are after him and they want to prevent something. And then you have this war where American Indians is basically get people out of the earth into battle with the soldiers in the army. So,
and you've got the African American Buffalo soldiers.
Yeah.
And also there's some group of white guys who aren't soldiers who are bushwhacking people.
Yep.
And I think maybe because he's winging it and hasn't planned it out, he just kept throwing all the ideas he has into one story.
Yeah.
I'm just possible that somehow the next issue, which is I assume the final issue of the arc, we'll pull things together, and then I'll go back and read them all together, and it'll make sense. But my faith is low at the moment.
Yeah, me as well. So this is issue number 6, and again with this second half, this is still my favorite issue. I feel like this world here that exists in this book still hasn't quite been tackled. It's starting to, for sure, with raising the spirits and everything to kind of cleanse the land. But I feel like there was a missed opportunity. This really set an absolutely powerful page, and it just kind of lost the impact when it got out of this issue, right? I love this. And even
making things up as he goes along theory. Like, he had a good issue there, and then he just made up something completely different. Jumped
and then
around.
Even comparing the art with this one, the art throughout the rest of it is fantastic for sure, but it also just feels like there's a different sensibility to this one too. It feels like the art even works better. I mean, look at these images here. They're fantastic,
The forefathers of his tunes, it's great.
Yeah. It's really, really good stuff. So it's disappointing, I mean, I'm not going to stop getting it. I'm absolutely, and if he continues with more, I'm absolutely going to get it. I feel like it's worth the investment, like I'm not so defeated that I'm saying screw it and it's all gone. So that's a positive thing for sure. But I don't know, man. Maybe it's a misstep. Maybe this next issue is going to tie things up to some degree. I don't know. We'll see, I guess.
I've been watching since you guys have been talking about this book in the beginning. This is quite a surprise. Because you guys have really praised this book.
Oh, we're not dissing it. We just
no.
Well, we kind of are
dissing it a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, but
we did love it. Like the first arc, I think we all loved that first arc, and then when this arc started, we all were thinking it was going to be even better than the first arc.
It's the same team, though, right? The same people.
Everything is the same. Yeah. No,
except for the colorist.
The colorist is changed. Yeah, because it's not the.
I think the colorist has now changed twice.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Since the new arc, since Bill Crabtree left, they had one colorist, and now they have another one.
That's
You're right.
Wow.
Yeah, Nero listed there, and then Cox listed. Yeah.
Which is kind of like lots of change in order to colorist gives you a different sense of the art as well. In the same way, color tells a lot of the storyline as well, the mood, the tension, all that stuff. So interesting to see this, but I really like it. I'm kind of surprised that Arkudi himself, knowing that he can actually write, but it's just took out so much things to write in a couple of issues. It's just so many storylines pushing together in order to get the main story out. And I think some of them can be just missed out a little bit. I think, but I mean, I don't know the end of the story. first of all, but just the way it feels after those 2 issues is like, why?
And
Yeah.
he's a very experienced writer, right? He's been writing with Mike Mignola for years and years on
Yeah.
BRD.
I mean, all the beard.
And I think before then he wrote at the Big Two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wonder. I almost wonder if just something is broken in the process.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
In there.
Misinformation somewhere. Yeah.
But it may my whole view might change when we get the next issue and I read them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I caught up. I'm glad
I'm glad you have
caught up.
spoken about it as well.
Well,
It
so
was quite a
it'll be
stack
good to
waiting
end
for
on
me.
Laura,
at
which you
Galaxy.
guys all liked, right?
Mhm.
Loved it.
I've only read the 3rd issue of Laura,
Mhm.
Yeah,
which
I've looked at it.
has 2 short stories, which I assume are fine that I read them without the first story.
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. What did you think, Gore? Take it away.
Well, I know the first one, right, with the Miyakaze, right? Damien already addressed this one in his
Miyazaki,
channel
yeah.
quite well,
Miyazaki.
right? And this idea of why do you have all these women protagonists in your stories, and sometimes they're not wearing any clothes. So, but that's not that unusual in writers. As you guys know, I'm a Guido Creepex guy. He's all about Valentina. It's all about women protagonists in his stories.
Mhm.
And Jane Austen, she wrote some pretty good men, and so did the Bronte girls. So you don't have to have the same sex to be able to write well. In any event, so yeah, it's really very nice. But it was the second story I really liked, Muse, and there the girl looks a little bit like the girl from Carmen.
Yeah.
Very much, yeah.
Right? But I recognize those eyes. I'm thinking I've seen those eyes, and no, not any woman that I know, but. I've seen those eyes here, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that's what
So
I was
I
going to
watched
say.
it from
Yeah.
Mobius. I'm thinking, where have I seen these Chica's eyes?
Yep.
Hey, wait a minute. March borrowed the eyes from Mobius. So,
And I mean, that whole first story is so Mobius as well, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Setting the line work, the delving into him being a character in his comics, meeting some of his other characters and influences and etc. Right? Like there's such a cleanliness to the first page of Irene that just it boggles my mind. I pored over that first page for a good 5 minutes before I left it because there's something about especially that top image with the green background, the tiled background. There's something about that unbelievable, just the simplicity of it. Really gorgeous stuff.
yeah, he's taking
Sorry to
also a
cut you
page
off there.
from Illuminata, also from Manata.
Uh-huh.
But that's how it's an obvious influence in him.
Mhm.
And he understands sensuality as well. And
Mhm.
sometimes, and so, and
It's interesting that he thought of Miyazaki as his natural critic.
Yeah.
That's right.
I guess someone who just delves deep into imagination versus someone who does slice of life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, it's
But
a
I
wonderful
actually,
comic.
it's interesting that after criticizing himself for doing slice of life, the next story is extremely autobiographical seeming. But I really liked seeing an autobiographical story done in such a beautiful European drawing style, because I'm used to the more scratchy indie, sort of sloppily drawn indie autobiography comics.
The thing about the second story is that story about this man needs a model. He needs a nude model, and he's trying to find somebody. But it's also on subtext is also basically a potential love story between the man and the woman.
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't you choose me? And when I was in school, one of my roommates was a photography major, and I was a government major, so I was always around the law and order guys and gals.
Mhm.
But I also had a section of friends that were more of the the artsy types, the English majors, philosophy majors, and the photographers. And one of my roommate's friends was this beautiful woman. She's absolutely stunning, and it was raven black hair, sparkling eyes. And she came up to me one day. She says, "I need a model." And I had not modeled for anyone before, and of course, there's no reason for me to model for anybody before. And she says, "I go, yeah, sure. I need something for my portfolio for a class." And she goes, "But it's going to be nude modeling. Is that okay with you?" Now, mind you, here's the rule: if a beautiful woman asks you to take off your clothes, the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I said yes. Now, mind you, though, vanity is important here because I was swimming that year. I was swimming every day. So I had a nice body. No nice body, I'm not undressing in front of her. And so now I barely knew her, right? I barely knew her. And so when I read this story, and of course, here the roommates, they know each other at least. But I have to say that event was interesting. And the thing is, though, she didn't photograph my face. And back then I had really, really long hair. I had down hair to my shoulders.
Uh-huh.
And she did black and white work.
Mhm.
Several months later, some friends approached me and say, "Hey, is that you in the gallery?" And I said, "Where in the gallery?" And he said the woman's name. "I think that's you. You recognize her?" I go, "What?" And so I go to the gallery. Yeah, and there I am, you know. And so he may have said, "I may use these in the gallery." I may, but anyway, they were up there. But people recognized me because of my hair, right? And I said, "Yeah, I guess that is me, I suppose." So, but yeah, and so this story reminded me. It was very realistic, I thought. So yeah, so just remember that rule, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a good rule. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, this also made me think back on Carmen in a different way. Like it hadn't occurred to me that his female characters may be stand-ins for him. So now I think back on Carmen, and I'm wondering, can we flip the sexes here from his real life experience? Like, was the person who was I can't remember Carmen's main character's name because I got the Carmen.
Oh, I forgot her name too. I should know this.
But she had this friend from childhood who was always off with other women, and so was it actually his friend from childhood, a woman who's always off with other men, and he always wanted to have a relationship with? And
maybe
did they get together in the end? Anyway, it makes me very curious about his real life and the relationship of his real life to his art in a way that I hadn't even thought about when I first read Carmen. I probably should have, but didn't.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. In our train of rereads, there's your reread. There's your homework this week. Yeah.
Let's say MLA format, Damien.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to wait till some large size trade came out for Carmen. I'm still not sure if they're going to do it in the original size or make it larger.
I doubt it. I doubt that they will, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want my money.
Okay, everybody. It's we're just 3 hours just past. Yeah, on that note, take our money. Gore Vidal, seriously, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thanks very much for coming and hanging out with us. Really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great.
And the invitation is always open. Anytime, just you have our contact information. We'd love to have you back.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Terrence and Ross and Damien. And I've known you guys since the beginning. You've always been very supportive of my channel and also other channels. You guys are always very generous with your time. And I really did enjoy this. And yeah, maybe we'll do it some other time. But I have to talk to Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And right now they are at the cheerleader camp because the Cowboys are out of the playoffs. So the cheerleaders were out on camp, and they are there to supervise and chaperone. So
nice. Okay, good.
Would Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe ever be willing to join us on the show?
Well, no, they may.
I suppose we can't afford them.
Well, their contract is a couple of thousand pages.
Wow, that's a lot of comics.
We have to give them a big retainer.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everybody, for hanging out in the chat. We appreciate it as always. Yeah, it was great to have everybody this week. Really good conversation. And
lots of
next
great
week,
stuff in the comments.
Who's up next week? Is it Damien? Is it you, Sleepy Reader?
I'm not sure. I feel like I did it last week.
No, it's me then.
Oh,
But
there you
I
go.
can do it again. I'm lost.
No. Okay, come on. Phew. I
We'll go to
I need
Rasa.
some,
Yeah.
some attention to my channel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Rasa's next week. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll
Adios,
talk to you
everyone.
next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Later.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.